Body meeting of 2021. Thank you all for joining us this evening. The first thing I'm going to do is, of course, I've called this meeting to order, and now we're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'm now going to take the roll. Councilor Waldman.
Here.
Councilor Murray.
Here.
Councilor Burkett.
Here.
Councilor Lucero.
Here.
Councilor Knight.
Here.
Councilor Parker.
Here.
Thank you very much. The governing body is present. The first item will be the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
All motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, will you please raise your hand? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any nays? All right, hearing none. The agenda has been approved, and we're going to move on to the administrator's report. Mr. Curry?
Mayor, and good evening to everyone. I'd first like to call on Tanya, Commander Latin, to give an update on COVID, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors, Administrator Curry. We have kind of slowed down in the state, but it is a Monday and Tuesday. Our total cases that came in over the 3-day average was low, it was in the 700s. Today it was 788. Hospitalizations are still really high. So far for the month of December, we've had 36 cases in the village of Corrales, and we're averaging 2.57 per day. Not as high as it was for November. November was 2.73. So that's a little bit of good news. We're still vaccinating a lot. We've added new vaccines. We're probably close to 11,000 now. And by the end of this weekend, we'll have vaccinated about 1,000 vaccines out to kids 5 to 11. So those are good news. However, we're watching the Omicron stuff coming in, and it's still early, but the problem, it took us about 2 months to really get a grip on Delta, but with Omicron, we don't have that time. So right now they're trying to work out the R0 value, and that's kind of the infection rate. So measles is the most infected virus that we know about, and it has an R0 of about 16 to 17. The problem is right now they're looking at Omicron running from 16 to 20. So there's some thought that it could be the most infectious virus that we've ever had. So that's kind of scary. We still don't know for sure if it's going to be the same illness as Delta, worse than Delta, less than Delta. Because the studies right now that are coming out of South Africa, their median age is 28 in South Africa. That is not a median age group for the United States. So we're looking at that. They're also seeing some muscle weakness, and I don't mean fatigue and malaise, I mean muscle weakness coming out of some of the cases in South Africa. And in England, the doctor reporting a bunch of strange rashes on children with Omicron. And we do have some evidence that it travels much better in the air. Some quarantined people that they tested, and it was the same virus that did not have contact with each other, caught it in the same hotel. They were quarantined and locked up. So that is kind of different. So we're just going to have to ride this out. Good news is it looks like getting your third shot, your booster, is really helping, at least with in vitro testing, and they're looking to get more data on the other. It appears that the Pfizer pill that's coming out, the Pfizer antiviral pill, is going to work as well. Monoclonal antibodies, which have done really well, and I've sent many people for them for Delta, does not look like it's going to work for Omicron. So mask up, and I mean mask up with good masks, KN95 or higher if you're going in somewhere. I wear an N95 if I'm going in anywhere. Hand washing, sanitizing, and be safe. I'll stand for questions.
Do we have any questions for Commander Latin from the council? All right, well, thank you, Tanya, for all your continuing efforts, and I'm going to focus on the number of vaccinations we've gotten to children. That's terrific. Back to you, Ron.
I think Michael Chavez is on by phone, and I would just like to give him a quick update. I know you've got his reports in your packet tonight, but I'd like to give a quick update on two what I consider to be forward-thinking and successful things that he's doing on Sagebrush and on La Entrada. Michael, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Good evening, Mayor, Councilors, Administrator Curry. So I don't know if you're aware, but we do have a paved trail at Sagebrush, a bike and pedestrian path. We're lacking the gabions, which hopefully will be in a couple of weeks. We also have the asphalt curb, which will be installed. I also don't know if everyone's aware of the problem we had with the bridge on West Stella and Loma Larga. We had an engineer look at it and it's structurally unsafe. We have a meeting scheduled for Thursday with MRGCD with our engineer to design, which will probably go in with a culvert. But we need to get with MRGCD to make sure we can fast track this thing and get it going. Because we want to get it in before irrigation starts. And I think we can do that. And that's about it.
Thank you, Michael. Couple of things I wanted to
I
report on.
think, wait a minute, Ron, I believe there's a question for Michael from Councilor Waldman.
Yes, hi, Michael. Thank you for the update on the trail. Can you tell me when there might be some progress on moving the materials off of Salt Lake Park and up to the upper Sagebrush?
I would like to start moving that up as soon as the trail's done and we get the contractor out of there. So maybe the end of January, we already had some of the dirt we had moved out, but I want to use those millings for up on top. So
Yeah,
hopefully by the end of January, maybe into February.
That's great. It's even driving up there, it's the shifting rocks are pretty unstable. So anything you do would be helpful. So thanks very much.
Okay.
Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Michael, on La Entrada, West Ella, have we determined who owns that bridge? Is that ours or is that MRGCD's?
That's going to be our bridge. They won't take claim for it. That's for sure.
Good question. Good question, though, Counselor.
Well, is this something we can budget for, or is it going to be taken care of in the current budget?
I have my bond from a couple years ago. We can use that. So we've got it taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Michael? All right, thank you so much. Ron?
Okay, a couple of other things. We lost our building official a few weeks ago, and at this point, I just wanted to give you an update that we are talking with Rio Rancho and trying to get an agreement put together sometime between now and the 1st of February. At the same time, we're also working with the state to help the residents who need permits get them. So we're working on that. The point that I want to make is that because we lost this building official very suddenly, we've endeavored to do as much as we can to make sure that we're communicating with the state and Rio Rancho on a daily basis as to what the needs are for the people who are seeking permits. There are some things that move rather quickly and others are not, but I just want to let the governing body know that there are 2 or 3 different approaches in process trying to get this into a sustainable situation where we are in better shape than we are right now when somebody decides to leave suddenly. The other thing is that I'm looking at the second meeting in January to present a resolution on the compensation analysis that we've been working on. Like I've mentioned to you before, the more we get into it, the more questions that are begged. And we want to get something that basically is fair and equitable for the folks that work here so that they know what their path forward is financially as far as working here at the Village of Corrales. So I'm looking forward to getting to you. We're looking at all the factors that we have to consider as far as inflation rates and some comparisons between other communities in our state. It's hard to find, and it's nice to say that Corrales is a unique place. So we can't find an exact comparison between us and other villages in the state, but we can, we're focusing on the number of people that we have working in the village, and also the scope of work at each one of those employees are doing. So we're trying not only to get equitable pay built up, but we're also trying to write job descriptions that accurately describe their scope of work on a daily basis, which justifies the pay and makes the pay ranges that we're working on. I will tell you right now at this point that right now, if you look in our ordinances in our code, you'll see a pay situation that is based between 10 and 11 steps, in one case 12 steps for each employees in different departments. And that may sound like we're getting down into the weeds a little bit, but we're going to shrink that down and make it more simple for the employees to understand and for everyone that's looking at this to understand. And I believe in that process, we'll also attain a lot of equity and fairness as we move forward on it. So are there any questions on anything that I've talked about so far before we move into the next portion?
Counselor Knight. You've got to unmute.
Yeah, is there an advertisement for that position then, for the building official gone out yet?
Yes, Counselor Knight, we posted that and it's been out there. We haven't had any responses, but Melanie posted it up over a week ago, I believe. And it's an interesting situation because building officials are unique, and they're in high demand, and you'll see a lot of what we've seen and what the state has seen is that a lot of contractors who are very busy right now building homes find themselves where they'll take anybody that they can get that have some expertise on how they build that home so that they can get through any sort of planning and zoning. So you'll also find a lot of building officials or ex or former contractors. So they come into that job with that background as well. So I wouldn't say it's a group. I would say that if you're looking to get into a job that has high demand, sometimes like registered nurses and things like that, at least in the state of New Mexico, there's a high demand for building officials.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions, Ron.
Okay. So now I would like, we're going to have 3 different presentations from folks. I'm going to start off with John Thompson, who is also chair of our robust tree committee. And he's going to talk a little bit about some tree planting that he and Anthony have been coordinating on down in the Bosque. John, are you out? There you are, John.
I am. All right. I'm John Thompson. I'm on the tree committee, but also on the Sandoval Master Gardeners, also a New Mexico tree steward and a 26-year resident of Corrales. So anyway, this is a pilot project that we've been talking with Anthony about for over a year, which is to do kind of a low-cost pilot replanting project with temporary infrastructure and volunteer supported. We looked at some of the areas that were in need of replanting, and we wound up selecting the 2012 burn scar area. It's very weedy. There are dead cottonwoods, and the area's total is probably around 2 acres. But what we're going to be working with is about a 1/4 acre area along the single track path, kind of in the middle of this photo. Next slide. One of the things that we've done is we've gotten donations of all of the materials. There were 100 plants that we got from trees of Corrales that were 3-leaf sumac, 75 of those in golden currants. And these were all in the number 5 containers. Our volunteers went out there. We dug the 100 holes, and we also put in augured holes for 10 cottonwood poles that we got from Santa Ana Nursery. The fire department provide for the clearing of the weeded area, and they put up a little pad for the cistern right alongside the top of the levee. And that'll keep the cistern out of the way of the traffic that goes along the levee, especially the heavy trucks and vehicles that are going up to the new wetlands project. Next. There's the plants. Anthony moved the plants out to the planting site with the fire department truck. Here's the layout of the plants that we had. You can see the the path off to the side. Here's our volunteers digging holes. I'm taking photos, so I didn't have to dig too many. And here's the fire engine provided higher pressure water for us when we were doing the planting, since each of the plants needed a few gallons of water as we planted it. There's the cistern up on the top, Anthony filling it. There's Anthony actually digging the last foot of 11-foot auger hole. The water table we found out is about 9 to 10 foot down. So our cottonwood poles are over 12 foot, so they're adequate to go in. There's the area. We're just cleaning up after the planting. We had great volunteers. We had volunteers from Master Gardeners, from New Mexico Tree Stewards. The Bosque Advisory Commission provided some good muscle. And we also got several Corrales residents. So this is really a great volunteer effort. That's all.
Thank you
Any
very
questions?
much. Thank you. It sounds like a terrific project. Any
It's
member of
fun.
the council have a question for John? Counselor Knight.
Hey, John, that looked terrific. Lots of volunteers helping out. Now, if I was to ask you, like, what road would that be associated with?
Romero Road entrance.
Okay, the Romero Road.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I can't wait to go down and see it.
I'd like
Good.
to send a special thank you out for the donated plants and for all the volunteer work. Thank you, everyone. Counselor Murray?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Councilors. So, Mr. Thompson, is there any plan to kind of keep the weeds down to allow those plants to get established or anything like that?
Yeah, what we're hoping to do is to get a lot of wood mulch, hopefully from Anthony or from other sources. If we can bring that in, we'll try to put 2 to 4 inches of mulch around that area, probably on both sides of the single track, and that will really help keep the weeds down in that area. Wood mulch is really the key to the replanting and keeping weeds and dirt and everything else down.
Counselor Lucero?
Thank you,
Sorry.
Mayor, and thank you, John, for doing all that. It sounds like a heck of a collaboration between you and many other groups, and also thank you to Trees of Corrales, and I think you mentioned Santa Ana Tree Garden.
Yeah, and Ewing Irrigation provided the drip material. We went out today to put the drip in, and it was too cold, so we dug holes.
That's great. That's great to hear. Do you have any other projects like that in the mix?
Sorry.
What we hope to do is to make this kind of an ongoing project. I've asked Terry Brown to see if any of the Eagle Scouts are interested in being involved. The New Mexico Forestry, I've talked to Todd Gaines in the District 6, and they have money on their watershed restoration that we may be able to use to help purchase materials. We'll try to get more donations of native plants from Trees of Corrales, and Santa Ana Nursery is very good at providing plants for restoration projects. So
That's great. That's great. Thank you. That's a great start right there. Thank you.
okay, you're welcome.
Mayor, if I may, I would like,
Yes.
I'd like Chief Martinez to talk a little bit about some of the work that he's done, that he and John have been working on, and also ask him to tell a little bit about some of the wood distribution and sales.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chief.
Mayor, councilors, Administrator Curry, thank you. Mr. Thompson, thank you again for working with me and this pilot project. It couldn't have been done without you and all your volunteers. So yes, I've been working with John trying to get this started, so we're real excited. And Councilor Lucero, I do have some other projects slated, and we hope that we can get enough material and enough volunteers to coordinate this. As we move into the spring, some of our maintenance that we're doing on some of the trees in Village right away, and working with other arborists that do work in Corrales, I'm going to be reaching out and trying to get wood chips, not only for the Bosque, but for citizens. We're going to still continue that project. I want to give you a quick update. We're trying to get rid of the firewood still down there in the Bosque. This past weekend, we got rid of 5 truckloads. 2 or 3 of them had like 14-foot trailers to Santo Domingo Pueblo Church, and they're real excited to receive it, and we hope to keep supplying them with some of our dead and down. So, and thanks again for all the support. I think it's a real good project, and I feel real confident about it. Any questions for me?
I see any questions? Thank you, Chief.
Okay, Mayor, the next person I would like to give a little presentation is well known to the village with Lee, and I had a nice visit with him this afternoon, and some of the folks that he's going to be talking about or maybe introducing, I'm not sure. But with that, I'm just going to turn over to the man of Roadrunner Waste. How about it, Lee?
Thank you, Ron. Mayor, councilors, staff, citizens of Corrales. I wish I could be there in person to talk to you, especially at this time. But I wanted to at least let everybody know that my partner, my partner's family, Vicky's family, who most of you know, passed away about 2 years ago. And I have decided to sell Runaway Service. We've had, since Vicky passed away, I've had many opportunities. Many people has approached me about buying the company, but it was never the right person. They're never the right company, never the right people. I was approached recently by a company, Waste Connections. They are a national company. They operate, and before I said yes to anything, to even meeting with them, I did a little bit of research on them and how they run their operations. They're more a family-run operation. They do things at a local basis with localities having control of their environment. It was very important to me to leave this company. 17 years of work, 17 years that we've been involved with the village of Corrales. Leave it in what I felt were excellent hands. Some of the people that Ron talked about that we met with today were people whose company got sold to Waste Connections 20 some years ago. They're still employed there. It still runs as a family operation. They have assured me that they will continue to be a part of the community of Corrales as Roadrunner Waste has become known. I didn't take this decision lightly, but it was the right thing to do at the right time with the right company. And so that most of you know, they have owned the company for over a month. They did your cleanup. They've been out there. The same employees. There's incentives for the employees to stay. I'm going to go meet with all the employees again tomorrow morning. Haven't seen them in a month. And I'm looking forward to the few that I've talked to said, you know, it's like nothing changed. It's like we still do our job. We know what our job is. The 17 years that Roadrunner Waste, Vicki and I stood there, I can still remember in those chambers where we first were awarded that contract in December of 2003 to start in May of 2004. I don't know how much thanks I can give to the people that was there then, the people that we've come to know and do things for and be associated with for those last 17 years. One of the highlights of my career, which spans 52 years in this industry. It's just time to do other things and to look forward. I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to tell everybody at Corrales, and again, I wish I could have done this personally, how much I really have appreciated. And I know if Vicki was here, she would say the same thing. It was her, it was her life. I mean, she felt so proud every time she would get a call from a Corrales customer, whether it was a good call or a bad call, because we always got the bad ones resolved. And the good ones, we always pinned them on the wall so the drivers could see them the next day. You're still going to have the same people, Juan and Savino. Most of you, I don't know if they pick up here, but they've been with me for 15 years. Same guys, same job, and they'll do the same excellent job for you. I just want to thank you all. And one other thing that I want to say before I know you've got a big meeting tonight, a lot of important stuff, is I want to pass along to Councilor Burkett that your green waste request is very doable, and somebody will be getting with you and discuss how we can make this happen. Thank you all for a lot of good years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know how many communities would be this excited about their waste service, but I think I speak on behalf of almost everybody in Corrales. We love you guys and we love the service that your company has provided us. So I have every hope that the same employees will carry that level of service forward. Thank you for what you've done.
And I'm sure that they will. Thank you.
Any questions from the counselor for Mr. Dante? Well, thank you again, sir.
One last thing is a promise that I made to Ron and to the clerk today is next year, when the Harvest Festival really gets going again, I'll be volunteering.
Oh, we look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, so much. The next gentleman who's going to visit with us is going to tell you what he's been doing for us, and then he's going to tell us maybe opportunities that may lie in front of us. And I've had the opportunity to work with this particular gentleman since, my goodness, the 80s. And so, Mike Hammond, are you out there? There you are.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thank you, Mr. Curry.
Good evening.
Allowing me to present a couple of items for you folks this evening. I've got some updates on some projects that MRGCD is working with a number of folks on. And then I also wanted to weigh in a little bit on some of the more weighty things you're going to be debating later this evening relative to the cannabis ordinance. And then I want to share with you a new endeavor I'm embarking upon that will hopefully be helpful to the village going forward too, on a new assignment that I have. But I'll start with the update on the projects. We've happy to say that we've completed the weir project at the Corrales siphon. The siphon is fully stabilized now. It has now been completely recovered with sediment and gravel material that the river naturally put in behind the weir. And it has about 1.5 feet of cover over the top of it, which we were trying to achieve with that weir project. We also work closely with Chief Martinez and other safety officials and the boating community to improve that area tremendously with the portage area around the west side of the siphon for folks to portage around it if they were fearful of going over it with their boating skills, what have you. And also a launching point, a very nice boat ramp downstream of the siphon to allow for folks to safely launch their boats and go down to the Alameda Bridge takeout. So it's a very nice facility. The New Mexico Paddlers Association was super appreciative of the work that we did there, and they said, we wish we had those kinds of put in and take out facilities all over the river. So we might have set the standard for that. We are also working on several other projects, but the one that we're making progress on as we speak is a partnership with SCAFCA on the Harvey Jones outfall at the Rio Grande. As you know, the outfall was restricted by a siphon for the Riverside drain that was relatively high. So it was ponding water at the end of the Harvey Jones channel, creating a mosquito hazard for the community, as well as they were somewhat in violation of the state engineer's law that stormwater can't be impounded more than 92 hours. So we worked closely with SCAFCA. We lowered the siphon together with the design criteria that we put for that. And so that allowed for a free flow now of the Harvey Jones outfall to the river. Plus there's been a lot of excavation going on to actually redo that entire area into a really nice wetland and habitat that will use the Rio Rancho effluent outfall as a continuous water resource for a wetland habitat. So it's going to have a high flow channel on the north side of the area for the big storm events. Then there'll be 2 rock weirs that we put in place to allow for low flow to trickle through this wetland area that goes more through the central into the southern end of that whole complex. So it'll be a really nice feature. I hope people get a chance to go by and take a look at the work that's going on. They will be doing plantings in the spring and final other contractual work to make sure that we meet the needs. We got a new partner on it. AMREP actually needed needed some relief on a 404 permit, so they added some money into the mix that they're going to deposit with the village in case we have to do some replantings on year 3 according to the 404 permit. So pretty good multi-agency project there that is a nice boon to the environment there at the outfall. We're also working with the Interior Drain Planning Committee. We're drafted up an MOA. We're reviewing it internally right now, but basically it's a commitment by the district to do a maintenance sharing agreement and also a planning effort to determine exactly what the needs of the village are relative to making that a nice feature, public open space feature that would allow for any kind of extra plantings or anything to kind of make it a linear park and improve the safety in that corridor. And ultimately, when the district gets full title to all of its facilities that we're working on with the United States, we would be in a position to work out an arrangement with the village to completely turn that feature over as a public resource that you can manage from both the safety corridor as well as a linear park in the future. So that's the general overall game plan, but we'll work closely with the committee to kind of work through the issues on that. And that MOU will be forthcoming for review by the village here within the next couple of weeks, hopefully, before the end of the year. The other issue I wanted to bring you up to speed on is we met with several citizens, and Mr. Curry, my board chair, Karen Dunning, and I briefed folks about the concerns of the low volume of water or non-existent water in the Riverside drain, or as people refer to it as the clear ditch, but there's reasons for that. We're in a drought. We've had reduced irrigation due to the declining number of farmlands in the Corrales area. There's a lot more development and individual domestic wells being drilled and pumped, as well as the river itself has degraded about 12 feet below its original elevation since Cochiti Dam was constructed. So the river's dropped almost probably at an equal level as what the base of the Riverside drain is. So there's really unless there's a high flow in the Riverside drain has no water to collect from the river itself. So we've had a very low flow. We've had a very dry fall. However, we did release, we tripled the flow for about a week when we released water from Elvado that's being delivered down to Elephant Butte for compact purposes. And people noticed that the Riverside drain came back up briefly. And that's why it did. We had that high flow for about a week. So I just wanted to report that. But we are working with folks to see if there's anything the district can do over the long term to possibly make that some improvements there to maybe boost some flows into that area through our diversion channels and irrigation water. So we'll be continuing to look at that. So I could pause here for some questions on those items if you like, before I go into a couple other topics.
Do any of the counselors have a question? Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Mr. Hammond, so one of the questions I had, I think from a prior briefing about the river flows and so forth, is there any thought about removing vegetation that are on islands out in the middle of the river? Because they've got to be sucking up water too. I mean, it's got to be impeding some things and probably reducing the flows. So any thoughts about maybe kind of cleaning that up with other agencies?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilor Murray. One of the things that we're working with is the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation. Our our weir that we put in at the Corrales siphon actually raised the river level up about 2.5 feet. And I think some more of those kinds of structures need to be placed in the river downstream of the siphon to begin to get the river to bed to build up higher elevation. I think Sandia Pueblo is very interested in this. They're very concerned about the continual down cutting of the river and a loss of land from their west side of their reservation there on the east bank of the river. It's also happening on the west side along the Corrales Bosque. The river keeps cutting into the bosque area, and the bank keeps collapsing, and some trees fall in, creating hazards in the river that Chief Martinez has to worry about, et cetera. So the idea would be that we work on a what they call grade control structure plan to elevate the river over time, which will take quite a bit of effort, but it's worthwhile pursuing. And the Corps of Engineers has a program for that, and it requires cost share from the local sponsor. Could be a group of local sponsors. I think we'd be willing to cost share with the Pueblo. And I think the state of New Mexico has indicated they would be willing to do something as well to create a better riverbed there. So I think that's the long-term answer right there, Councilman.
Thank you. Any other questions on those topics? I don't see any. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to weigh in on the cannabis ordinance debate that you will be undertaking this evening and maybe in future board meetings. We advocate for farmers. We are a farming organization and land management organization. And we also serve the non-farming community with river flood protection and drainage and just quality of life with our system that plays an important role. The farming, the delivery of water, the maintenance of this environment is kind of a cornerstone of the Corrales environment, and also your goals is to preserving farmland and open space and all of those sorts of things. We have over 120 farms that are over at least that we deliver water to, of over 2 acres or more in the Corrales area, and they're declining. The price of land is going up. It's becoming more attractive for folks to subdivide their farmland because it's so difficult to make a living farming. And a lot of folks supplement their income that way on the smaller farm operations, but we're concerned about the possibility of our farmers being denied the opportunity to grow a legal and maybe a pretty prosperous crop. That being that of recreational cannabis or medical cannabis. And what's good about the way the state is approaching it, they're giving priority, at least initially, to what they call the underserved and the small farmer with the micro producer licenses. And to me, that would set very well within the confines of Corrales. That would allow our farmers to participate in growing a legal crop and may allow them to continue to stay farming and actually make a decent living at it. So I would urge the council to consider that issue. I don't think there's a lot of folks weighing in from the farming side of this debate, but I also want to share my thoughts on some of the misinformation that's been put out there by unknown parties. I received a brochure in my mailbox that indicated that there would be a tremendous increase in water use because of this, and also there's some
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray, point of order.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that this discussion, he is getting some unfair extra time to discuss this where other people are being somewhat limited. I think we need to either have him come back in on the discussion side of things, but I don't think it's appropriate at this time for him to continue.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Murray. Councilor Audio, do you have a thought here? Because it is true that this conversation is going into an item that we are going to discuss later.
That is correct, Mayor and Councilor Murray. I think, Mr. Hammond, I think one option, Mayor, would be to have him wrap up his comments in a short amount of time. I don't think we were expecting that comment on this agenda, this other agenda item, or the option would be, Mr. Hammond, if you wanted to stay, we're going to have discussion during our discussion item on cannabis, and you could also comment at that time. But Mayor, your discretion of how long he gets to wrap up, but I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you so much. Mike, can you finish in a minute or two, or would you prefer to go over into our normal discussion on this issue?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to address it just from, I'm a water expert, and I've researched this from the standpoint of the MRGCD. We've been asked if our water is a legal commercial use for this purpose, and we've made a determination that it is. It fits into the state engineer's requirements for a commercial water right, and that the impacts of groundwater production in that regard would require a commercial permit from the state engineer. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And I appreciate the opportunity to address you on that matter. I have just one other item to share. I am officially retiring from the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District as of December 31st to take on a new position that the governor has offered to me. Or she kind of twisted my arm to take it, quite frankly, and she's a very persuasive woman. I am going to be serving as her senior water advisor to address all issues water related, and that includes water infrastructure and wastewater as far as that goes. With all of the federal money coming in for ARPA funds and infrastructure dollars coming in, she believes I'm uniquely positioned with my experience and my connections with the federal government throughout my career, that I could do the job required to work with all of the communities and the water users throughout the state to develop a prioritized water infrastructure list that would allow us to meet the needs of the community in the foreseeable future with this once in a generation opportunity, as she put it, to do some amazing things, not only for general infrastructure, but for water in particular. And I am very pleased to be taking on this position. But I wanted to urge the village to maybe put together any of your priorities that you may have in your water and wastewater needs, as well as maybe even some thoughts about performing some studies to maybe work with some of the purveyors of those services like Rio Rancho and the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to perhaps reconsider the options that might be before us as a village. And I live here. I want to see it prosper and take advantage of all of these opportunities as well. It might be an opportune time to evaluate perhaps performing some studies with these funds to see how systems could be integrated to be more of a regional system that could serve the needs well into the future as the village continues to subdivide and expand their population in a way that would be conducive for good quality use of the sewer collection systems that are already sort of in place, as well as the possibility of using utility authority or Rio Rancho water systems to help further the what I consider to be the resiliency of the region in terms of water supplies for the long term. So I leave that thought with you, and I have really appreciated working with you all in my role here with the district. I'm leaving it in great hands. I've recruited some really fine people with a similar customer service approach and collaborative attitude. So I hope you'll be pleased when you meet these folks. And Ron has already met Mr. Kasuga, who will be acting until the board decides who will be the CEO here in the next 3 to 4 months. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I've enjoyed working with you, Mr. Curry, and Chief Martinez and others that you have. You got great staff, and enjoy working with those folks.
Thank you so much. Happy retirement.
Thank you.
Well, short retirement, right?
Right, yeah.
Mayor,
Yes.
that's all I have. I just would like to thank all the presenters that we had in the administrator's report. I've always found I hope the village and the governing body like to hear sometimes directly from the source rather than hearing from me, filtering whatever they have to say. But you know, the last 3 presenters, John, Lee, and Mike, in my conversations that I've had with them over the years, and every one of them brings the best interests of the village to the table every time they try to do something for us. So that's the end of my presentation, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the counselors on the department reports before we move on to the counselors forum? I'm scanning. All right, I don't see any questions. So we're going to move on to item E, counselors forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate. To inform the governing body of an issue of concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Anyone this evening? Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. A couple of things. I hope that in the future, like in January, that we can have a discussion about the library and their wanting to expend some funds and expand. And we've been trying to get on the agenda here for the last couple of months, I think. I thought there was going to be a presentation this month, but apparently not. So with that, I hope we'll see it in January. Also,
Councilor Murray, I'm sorry, can I ask for clarification? Are you talking about their request for the building that they've been working on, that grant?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of the we add funds as a matching fund basically on the 90,000 or so they've collected.
Okay, thank you.
And then also, since Mr. Thompson gave his presentation, I thought maybe for future consideration, maybe we could throw in some money in our future budget, maybe to make that program sustainable, and hopefully make Bosque a better place. So hopefully, I'd like to see that in the budget discussions next year.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Any other people for the Corrales forum? I mean, the Corrales counselors forum. If not, then we will move on to the Corrales forum. That's item F. That section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda. Tonight, we're going to have a 2-minute time limit, only because we have so many people seeking time on our cannabis issue. So who do we have?
First up, we have Mr. Frank Wirtz.
Mr. Wirtz?
And you have
Can you
2
hear me?
minutes. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor, councilors. So as a youngster, I was confused by watching my parents sometimes struggle with decisions, and I decided that as an adult, I was simply going to analyze the situation, make the right choice, and move on. But I pretty quickly learned that decisions are rarely right or wrong, right? There's always an element of risk in making a non-optimal choice. However, if I made a decision that was made in the best interest of my family, and my decision resulted in something that was less than non-optimal, I was still comforted by the fact that my decision was made to serve them and was made in good faith. You, as our counselors, are our representative government, with the word representative being key here. To draw from my analogy, I just want to say that Your family obligations in this matter are to reflect the wishes of your constituents. The tough part of being a politician or a parent is that it's rare that folks remember when you get it right. Get it wrong and people remember. Nobody wants that. Something we always try to avoid. But no matter what, we're human, we're going to make mistakes. For representative politicians, you do have the benefit of knowing that if you err on the side of representing the wishes of your constituents, you can be assured of history being very gracious. If, however, a politician takes a position which is contrary to that of their constituents and an error is made, then that is going to be their legacy and a brand which they will not outlive. In closing, I want to encourage you to ignore speculative arguments, identify and reject biases from those with ulterior motives, and above all, be true representatives for the wishes of your constituents. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Kurt Flora.
Yes, 2 minutes is really short time. I was hoping to get 3 minutes out of this. Anyhow, tonight I would like, first off, I'd like a count of hands of commissioners or counselors that were not at any of my meetings during any of my meetings at the village. Can I get a hand raise of all the commissioners who were not involved in any of my meetings? Please.
That's okay, Mr. Flora. This time period is for you to talk to the council. They're
Well,
just in listening mode, so you go ahead. All
Well,
right.
I'm
Go ahead,
asking for a
Mr.
hand
Flora.
rise. Okay. A month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I asked to be put on the agenda again. And I have not heard anything, or am being refused to be put on the agenda to speak with the counselors about all the ordinances that I talked about a couple months ago, 1886, 1887, 1893, and what was it, 1881 2D, okay? I have not been able to speak with anybody about these because you guys refuse to put me on the agenda. Now, I'm not asking the people that were in my meetings to be or even have a say-so in talking with the council. I would like the people that were not there. And if we have 4 people, that's what I'm asking. We have a quorum, we can do this. Okay, so what happened, I have 4 different recordings from Lori with 4 different answers. Okay, I hope everybody has read the Corrales comment last week where we put an article in there about the corruption that's been going on. We're on 3 years, 7 months. We've been battling the village to try to force them to
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
actually operate by their own ordinances. You guys refuse to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. All right, we're going to move on then if we have no more folks for the Corrales.
I'm sorry, there is one more, Fred Hashimoto.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fred.
Thank you. I'd like to commend Village Hall for responding to quote, "who we are," unquote, and proposing an amendment to ordinance 2106. This is not an agenda item for public input tonight, so I'm talking now. In prohibiting a commercial cannabis growing within 300 feet of any residence property line, it virtually keeps commercial cannabis growing out of small sized lots like 1 acre. Another plus is that it gives that protection to residents who happen to live in a mixed neighborhood commercial zones. However, the most bothersome point about the newly proposed amendment is that it allows big, ugly mega greenhouses like Ultra Health and Bernalillo, growing many thousands of plants, which among other things can produce odors, increase traffic, and all that goes along with that. Although the Comodina greenhouses probably have less than 1,000 mature plants, odors are smelled 300 yards away in the adjacent subdivision and on ditch roads. In past years, living along an empty field, like a conservancy easement field, was like being in heaven. Now, these fields, according to the proposed amendment, are great candidates for mega greenhouse facilities, which can make living there not so heavenly. About 10 million results come up in the Google search of quote, growing cannabis odor, unquote, which tells us A, it's a bothersome problem, and B, no one has come up with a definitive way to monitor and deal with it. Probably the most obvious way is to limit plant numbers because less plants means less odor. A positive and really needed addition to the amendment would be to limit plant numbers to 25 mature plants per acre. This would translate to 75 or more mature plants in Colorado. The way New Mexico defines mature plants grossly understates the actual number of growing mature plants. So please consider adding plant number limitations to the new amendment proposal to decrease the probability of mega greenhouses adversely impacting surrounding neighborhoods in Corrales. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on then to item G, which is our consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Councilor Murray, I move we approve this consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. We have a second from Councilor Knight. I'm going to take a voice vote on this one. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Thank you. Those items have been approved. We're now going to go into new business, and the first items are really regarding our bond program. Number one is presentation and discussion of the village bond program from Brad Angst from Stifel Public Finance. Brad, are you with us? There you are.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for having me on. It's good to be with you. I'm here to update you on your bond program, your capital improvement program, and some of the different accomplishments that you've been able to have through that program, and then also report to you on the most recent bond, which is going to be used to purchase another some conservation easements. So I do have a presentation prepared, and I'm going to share my screen here with you. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'll take you through a little bit of background information first. I've covered some of this with you before, but I do want to go through some of the metrics and some of the items that we use to evaluate and help structure a bond according to what your voters have approved and according to the council and staff's wishes for repayment and for the appropriate mill levies. And so on this slide that you see here, we've got a historical look 7 years back at the different mill levies that are imposed throughout the city. And the one we work with you on is right here in the middle on the bottom, the debt service levy. And so back in 2018, when the village first started moving forward with the new capital improvement plan and the Geo Bond, it was determined that by the voters and through the campaigning that a 2.4 mill levy would be the limit on the tax rate and the repayment for these bonds. And so in 2018, it was 2.4. There was a pause in 2019. And then in 2020, again, we got back up to the 2.4 and the 2.4 here in the most recent year. And so that mill levy is what is producing the revenues in order to pay for the improvements, the road improvements, the parks and rec, the conservation and open space type projects that you all have been working on. Here on this next slide, this is another look at your tax base. So that mill levy is applied against all the taxable property value within within the city or the village limits. And so we apply that 2.4 against the total taxable valuation in each year, and that brings in enough revenue again to repay those debt service figures. There's also a little bit of an operational property tax that comes in to help with some of the village operations. The real estate and the non-residential retail and commercial properties have had good growth here over the last 7 years or so. We're seeing good annual increases, about 5% on average. There was a larger figure back in 2015, about 13%. And then here this most recent year, through some of the COVID items, we saw a little bit of a reduction, about 8%. Here on the right-hand side is your bonding capacity. The state and statutory limitations provide the village with bonding capacity of approximately $15.8 million that the village could go out and take on as debt and use for projects. The village has stayed well under that limitation. In fact, you're using less than half of it. So good conservative number there. Currently, you have approximately 3.2 million of bonds outstanding. And as you pay off those bonds, your capacity is returned. And so that's what this table here is on the bottom right, the additional capacity that grows over the years as you pay off your debt obligations. Okay, let's take a look here. This goes back to 2018 and the bonding questions, the Geo general obligation bond questions and ballot questions that you've gone and asked your public to support. Of course, in 2018 was the kickoff of this new program with 4 different questions that totaled about 4.5 million in bonds. Actually, it was a total of 5. Each of those projects have been completed with the transaction that we're going to present to you here next being the last piece of that. So this 1.376 here in the gray section, that is the last Geo bond from the 2018 election that's going to be used for, again, purchase of conservation easements. In 2020, you went back to your voters to continue the capital improvement program and asked for another 4 million. These amounts were for municipal streets and road improvements, as well as some recreational and park improvements and facilities. Of the 2020 questions, you have completed the 1.5 for the roads, and there's approximately 1.9 remaining for parks and rec and recreational. And the tentative plan is to go out for that amount in the spring or next summer. Again, we're able to accomplish all of this while keeping your mill levy and your property tax rate level, and we'll show you that here in just a moment. I spoke about the 1.376 here that we are currently working towards, and we're on the next agenda item going to ask for approval. Wanted to just give you a couple of quick statistics for that. We were able to lock in a very low interest rate on that. The true interest cost on this was less than 1%. We're at 0.99% for the true interest cost. And that's a repayment over 10-year period. So very pleased with that. A good low cost option for your taxpayers and citizens, and good return for them for the projects that they have instructed and voted to move forward with. Okay, the next slide here is a look at the your Geo Bond portfolio. We wanted to give you a little bit of detail on this. You had the first 2018 bond for $2 million. That one repays out in 2030. You had the next one in 2020. This was for the first conservation easement purchase that the village went forward with. And then the most recent one last summer, the Geo Bonds that you went out and did some road projects and some park and rec. And so when you aggregate these payments, you'll see the total over here. We have on the front end 924, and then it starts to ramp down and decline. And the reason for that is so that you can continue your capital improvement program, layering on every 2-3 years additional projects and funding without increasing the total amount that you or your taxpayers are going to pay. We've also listed out here a couple of your gross receipts tax bonds that you have outstanding. The first one was done in 2014, the second one in 2020. Again, these have a level repayment. There's no thought or additional capacity when utilizing this same revenue stream. So those are steady level payments for you going out until 2033. And then there's a bit of a drop off and some potential additional capacity if you need it at that time. Okay, I wanted to talk about not only the current debt portfolio that you have and the payments. I wanted to show you this next bond again that we're putting in front of the council, and the next agenda item with an ordinance approval is represented here in the middle, 2021A. But I wanted to show you how we have future capacity for your projects. This is something, working with village staff and with mayor and council, that we've been asked to make sure that the village always has the ability, the flexibility to go back out and take on additional projects, whether it be roads and parks, or whether it be repairs and maintenance. So you do have this additional capacity. We estimate over the next 6 or 7 years, an additional $6 million of bonding capacity that can be issued without increasing that tax rate. And so here on the right-hand column, we calculate the 2.4 maximum, and we keep that rate at or below for the full cycle. I also want to point out that this holds your tax base, which is here on the left-hand side, the assessed valuation. We're holding that flat, so 0% growth, even though you've had a historical average of 5% growth. And so as that grows, which we anticipate is going to happen, it's actually going to lower your tax rate, or that mill levy, which provides the capacity in the future. So should this council and staff or the next ones in the future decide to take that on. So again, we wanted to just show some that, excuse me, show some of the math, give you all some guidance on this, that we are, doing this the way as prescribed, as you've directed us to, and also giving you, the knowledge as you go into approving or considering the ordinance coming up. This is another look just graphically at the chart I just showed you, and how we can layer on each bond. So each different color is a new financing, and how we can do that in order to pair up with your capital improvement plan while keeping you at a steady mill levy rate in the future. And that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to have a discussion, answer any questions that you may have.
Well, Brad, you're making bonds into a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you. I
Are there
know-
questions? Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I feel that way. I don't always, there's not usually a whole lot of others who like to talk bonds with me, but thank you.
Well, is there a question from any of the counselors concerning Mr. Angst? Yes, Counselor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Angst, is this the information that you gave us? It's for upcoming bonds? So are you saying, like, say, if we put a bond issue on the February 22 election ballot? Or is this information that about bonds we've already had?
This is a comprehensive presentation. I wanted to show you what you already have. I wanted to show you the bond that we're working with you on right now and that you're going to be considering for approval on the next agenda item. That's already been voted on by your constituents and voters. And then I'm just showing you a plan moving forward. None of this has been decided on, but your next election, it looks like it's probably 2023. 2023 is when you're going to have that next capacity to be able to layer on a bond without increasing the tax rate above that 2.4.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, Counselor. Mr. Angst, inflation has taken quite a hit the last few months, and it looks like that the interest rates are probably going to go up. So how would that affect future bonding capacity?
Yeah, we're starting to hear from some of the analysts that the Fed could have an increase in the rates as soon as March. I think we may see 3 increases in the next calendar year. I think while that's going to increase the bottom line rate, the Fed funds rate on the short term, we are at historical lows right now. I expect interest rates to go up in the future. We've been expecting that for a while now. The good part of this is that we're at historic lows, we're near historic lows of interest rates. So even with 25 basis points to 75 basis points increased, your cost of capital is still probably going to be below long-term historical averages, but it will go up is the thought, not only because of inflation, just because of the investor demand. They are starting to need more interest rate and return on their investments in order to keep investing in these type of bonds. So we do expect that to come. I don't think it's going to be a quick push up in the interest rates, but we are preparing and expecting that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Welcome. Counselor Burkett.
Mayor, Mr. Angst, thank you very much. Just one point of clarification. You had said that we don't have bonding capacity until 2023. Is that we have an election coming up in 3 months? Is that to vote on a bond or to fund a bond 2023?
So yeah, thank you for the question. So that gives me a good chance to clarify here. So you have 1.9 million of remaining authorized bond capacity. So your voters have already voted and provided that. There's 1.9 remaining that's going to be issued probably in the spring or next summer. After that amount is exhausted, it'll probably be 2022 or 23 before we recommend you go back to an election for additional bonding capacity.
Makes sense. Any other questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
I just for clarification with Brad, generally speaking, the village would not be at an election in 2023, so it would be a 2024 timeframe. Is that correct?
That is accurate. If it was in 23, it would have to be a special election off cycle.
Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, thank you very much for the presentation, which is going to be available. Obviously, it's available to everyone, right, to look at and ponder and perhaps call you with more intensive questions. But appreciate it. And if it's all right, we will move into the next item of new business, which is consideration, action, and approval of ordinance 2107, the title of which is so long, I'm not going to repeat it right now. Unless, Melanie, would you like to read through the entire title?
Certainly. This is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $1,377,000 of general obligation bonds, Series 2021B, pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 3-30-5 and Section 6-15-1, for the purpose of acquiring conservation easements or other rights or interests in land for the preservation of farmland, open space, wildlife habitat, and recreational opportunities, establishing procedures for the sale and delivery of the bonds, including execution and delivery of a bond purchase agreement and escrow agreement between the Village of Corrales, New Mexico, and the New Mexico Finance Authority, or the Finance Authority, delegating authority for selling and delivering the bonds and setting dates, price, interest rates, interest periods, and other procedures, ratifying actions heretofore taken, repealing all action inconsistent with this ordinance, and authorizing other matters related to the issuance of the bonds.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Jill or Brad wants to speak to this item. This is, as they said, the issuance of the final portion of what's commonly known as the farmland bond passed in 2018.
Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Yes, Jill.
This is Jill Sweeney from Sherman and Howard, bond counsel to the village. Happy to say a few words to let you know what you're voting on here. You'll recall that in August, we were before you with a resolution to approve the submission of an application to the New Mexico Finance Authority for its consideration and review of an application. We have done that. These bonds will be purchased by the New Mexico Finance Authority, a body corporate that engages in local government finance and through which the village can obtain the most advantageous interest rate. So we've now worked with the Finance Authority and come before you with an ordinance authorizing the sale of $1,377,000 in general obligation bonds, the purpose of which is to generate funds for the purchase of the Lopez and Kuntz conservation easements that we've been talking about together over the past several months. So your action tonight would approve the bond ordinance along with the bond purchase agreement and the escrow agreement necessary to consummate the bond transaction. And most important, one of the most important elements of this ordinance that I'll draw your attention to is that it establishes the parameters pursuant to which the transaction can be engaged in, and as Mr. Angst reported, those terms and conditions are very favorable at the moment. So the highlights are that final maturity of these bonds shall not exceed August 1, 2031. The maximum interest rate on any particular maturity can't exceed 1.4% per annum. The true interest cost cannot exceed, and the true interest rate cannot exceed 1%. And so this is the ordinance, if you will, that approves the sale and approves going forward with the sale of the bonds.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the counselors for Ms. Sweeney? All right, if there are none, I will take a motion to approve.
Mayor, point of order, this is Councilor Murray.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just thinking well, we can take a motion to, and then we can discuss it. I'll take that back.
All right. Do I have a motion on ordinance 2107?
Move approval, Mayor, of ordinance 2107.
Thank
Second.
you. I have a second. And then there's discussion, Councilor Murray?
Yeah, thank you. And maybe Mr. Audio, you can chime in on this. I thought ordinances were to be posted and published. Have we done that? And was the resolution, or is it, typically resolutions are, we can vote on, as it is, but did we vote to post and publish for this one? Just refresh my memory.
Madam Mayor, Councilor
Yes,
Murray.
I think Jill Sweeney would like to respond. Go ahead, Jill.
Madam Mayor, Councilor Murray, yes, a notice of intent to adopt ordinance was published at least 2 weeks in advance.
And we voted on that.
Jill?
Madam Mayor, Councilor Murray, you typically don't do a notice of intent to adopt ordinance, unlike a county.
My understanding is we post and publish any ordinances come before council. And that is a vote by the council.
And I might be able to help clarify. We did post and publish. Because it was a bond resolution, that process goes through the bonding council, and they normally don't bring the matter prior to the ordinance being published to the council, which it is in alignment with New Mexico law on that bonding process.
Okay.
So it would be boot and suspenders to bring it before us to say, let's resolve to do this, but it isn't legally required for the bonding.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're doing this on the up and up.
We're doing it right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Murray. So we have a motion and a second to approve. I'd like to take a vote at this time. Councilor Parker? Councilor Parker?
I had trouble with the mute button. Yes.
That's okay. Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Well, I got to tell you, it passes, and I'm very excited because it means we have expended those farmland easement bonds, and we have preserved a large number of acres, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but I will get the number, and I think it's a kind of a proud achievement, and it wasn't an easy lift. So thank you, everyone, for making that happen. Let's move on to number 3, which is the presentation of the bond pricing certificate relating to the Series 2021B general obligation bonds. And this item is for Jill Sweeney from Sherman and Howard, and someone's dog.
Happy to have the assistance, Madam Mayor, members of the council. You have before you a non-action item, a pricing certificate as required by the statute. Because we are dealing with the New Mexico Finance Authority, they set interest rates in advance, so we are not going to out to the public market to do a sale. We are happy to report to you that our negotiations with the Finance Authority, as Brad reported, will meet all of the specifications and parameters in the ordinance. And congratulations to the village on that very low interest rate and being able to, as the mayor said, complete the sale of all of the conservation easements prior to the deadline. And as you know, that authorization goes back all the way to 2019. So we'll look forward now to next steps. As you know, these bonds will be placed with the Finance Authority. The date of issuance will be January 21st, 2021, following the statute of limitations period coming up. So pleased to report a successful transaction with the New Mexico Finance Authority.
Thank you very much. Any questions on the information Jill's just given us? If not, I would like to suggest that we take up item 4, which should be, I hope, a short item, and then I'm going to call for just a small break because I think we're going to be here for quite a while. So I'm hoping that'll be okay. We'll take just a 5-minute break for whatever purpose may be necessary. But I'd like to move on before we do that to consider number 4, consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2141. This is a resolution authorizing year-end adjustments for fiscal year 2021-2022. Raina, are you there? Raina? Melanie, is Raina with us? You're muted.
If she is, she might be by phone, but I'm not, there are so many phone numbers on here. I'm not sure which one would be her.
Well, let's see if we can get her on the phone. Meanwhile, we can, we'll come back to that item and we'll just take a very short break, really 5 minutes, and we'll come back and begin again with item 4. Thank you very much.
Raina, are you there now?
I'm here, Melanie. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you. Okay, we'll get back to you as soon as we come back from break.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Okay. Melanie?
Oh, Raina, is that you?
Yes, apparently I have to press *6 and I didn't know that.
Well, now you know it, so don't worry about
I
it.
just want to make sure it's working still.
As soon as Melanie gets back and we reconvene, I will we'll get to item number 4.
Great.
Okay, thank you very much. There's
Thanks.
Melanie. Sure. We're just waiting for a couple of counselors to return.
I do not claim to be a mastermind of the Zoom, but what I have learned is if you have your mute on, if you just hit the space, it will temporarily unmute.
Yeah, and if you're calling in by phone, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself before you start talking.
Yes, Raina was explaining that to the group. We learn something every day. So I think we're just waiting for Counselor Woolman to return, and then we will start again on item number 4.
So Melanie, how many do we have online so far? I mean, tonight?
The most we had at one point was 82, I think. Right now we're at 72.
Yep, my little 72 little heads down there on the participants.
How do you keep track of them?
How many are scheduled to speak for the next, or for?
We have 21 people that have called or signed up or sent in messages. So
Okay.
We'll be getting good public comment.
yes.
Okay, I'd kind of like to get started again. There he is. He must have heard me. Perfect. All right, so we're going to return to our agenda. Consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2141. This is a resolution authorizing year-end adjustments of various funds for fiscal year 2021, 2022. We are going to be hearing from our Finance Director, Raina Aragon. Raina?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I apologize about that. I didn't know how to unmute myself. The first correction before we go forward, it's not year-end adjustments, it's just a regular budget adjustment request. And I have 5 of them.
All right.
And so the first one is a local government road fund budget adjustment, and that's just new monies we received from the state. And the other 4 are capital appropriations that we received from DFA, and they're brand new.
All right, well, we always like to get money. Are there any questions for Ms. Aragon about these particular adjustments? Yes, Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Yeah, I had a question about the 75,000 for the bike equestrian pedestrian trail. I was kind of confused because I didn't know if that was the sagebrush trail or was this new monies. So how are we going to apply this anyway?
Councilor Murray, I'm not quite sure I'm not involved in the ICIP process on whenever we request the money, so I'm not sure what they expended on. Mike, is Mike on the phone? Does he happen to know what that one is for?
It is the Thompson fence line sagebrush.
Well, does that mean, we appropriated 80,000 for our budget last year? I mean, is this the monies that we're going to use or how? I mean, I'm getting a little confused about where that money's being used and so forth, because they didn't match up in the numbers that Rainey provided for the budget in this. So I was just wondering how they aligned.
Well, I do not know what it is going to be used specifically for, but that 75,000 is correct. That is what we were given this year.
Ron, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, Counselor, I just want to add that some of the money and the definitions on it are still being discussed internally based upon the fact that we've got the money. We're just trying to make sure that it satisfies what the DOT wants us to use it for.
So maybe we'll just go towards Main Street or something like that. I mean, is that what we're thinking about using it for?
No, we've got a separate set of monies for Main Street that's based on the county, Main Street and us. But this, my understanding is this is mostly trying to line up the Thompson Fence Line Trail.
So yes, Councilor Woolman?
Mayor, is this the money that we received from Commissioner Block?
No.
No. It's
No,
separate.
we actually received, I think it was $40,000 from Commissioner. And so altogether, the trail will be, that's what will be used. But I think probably what happens is if there's a little more here or there, the DOT would want us to put into another category for another use, then it would go there. But no, we got 40,000 from the county and 75 from the state. So we're in good shape with the money. Are there any other questions regarding the adjustments? All right, I would take a motion to approve the adjustments.
So move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to take a voice vote on this. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on. Thank you very much, Raina. We're going to move on to item number 5, consideration, action, and approval of resolution 2142. This is a resolution establishing regular meetings of the governing body and determining a reasonable notice. Do I have a motion for this item?
I move we approve resolution 21-42.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Oh,
Mayor.
Counselor, I'm sorry, Ron, you had something?
Mayor, I just say this as a preface to a discussion that we may have later as far as our meetings going, that we may need going forward based upon some conversations that we'll have later to keep this in mind as we go ahead and vote because of the necessity for all counselors to future meetings. So I'm just saying that the governing body may hear coming from us or coming from one of the counselors a need to move the first meeting in January.
All right, would we move it or would we have a special meeting? Randy, what, don't mean to be mysterious here, but if we do need to move these items, move potential ordinances for vote and action next month, we may need to move a date so that all counselors can be present. But now I'm wondering if that's the correct thing to do then or now.
Mayor, right now you may simply approve the regular meeting agenda because they're scheduled on the dates that meetings are regular set. Then
Right.
you could choose if necessary to either have a special meeting or to amend that meeting date if necessary.
All right, so we'll kind of keep it simple here. Are there any other? Yes, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, does this take into account we're using Zoom? Because I do think we mentioned we're meeting in court chambers, but does this include the possibility of continuing with Zoom?
Yes, because we also have an emergency declaration, a resolution of emergency conditions. That's number 8. And I think given our situation with COVID, we may or may not find ourselves in any different situation in January, which would mean that we would have to go via Zoom. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Any other comments? Well, then I would take a motion. We have a motion to approve in a second. I guess it's time for me to vote, to ask for a vote here. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 6, which is consideration, action, and approval of resolution 2143. This is a resolution establishing a holiday schedule for all village employees. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Lucero.
Second.
I have a second from Councilor Knight. Questions or discussion?
Mayor, Councilor Murray.
Yes.
So I noticed that President's Day was noted as being November 26th, but I mean, I understand from what Melanie was trying to tell me that you keep a floating day available, but to label it President's Day kind of misleading because that typically happens in February.
It just bothers your engineer's heart.
Yeah, the OCD part.
Well, I mean, we can put it down as a floating holiday because I think that's exactly what it is. You know, you could take one or the other. This allows employees to take a day after Thanksgiving, but they could take the other one.
Okay.
Does that make, would that ease your
I think that's
concerns?
probably a better approach. Just say it's a floating holiday, and then that way, because when people see President's Day, they say, "What the hell is it doing in November?"
When did that happen?
Yes.
Councilor Waldman.
Yeah, it's just a minor point of accuracy. Actually, I believe that should be November 25th, not the 26th. If it's the day after Thanksgiving.
All right, so we would make those with those amendments or corrections that the date would be corrected and it would be identified as a floating holiday. And I guess we would have to make some mark on the actual President's Day so people would understand. With those items, I think we have a motion and a second. So if it's all right with everyone, I will take a vote to approve that. Councilor Parker?
Yes.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next item, of course, is part of our responsibilities, and it is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2144. This is a resolution calling for a regular municipal election to be held on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 in the village of Corrales. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes,
Second.
Councilor Waldman. All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none, going to take a voice vote. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next item, unfortunately, is we didn't think we'd be here, I'm sure, but we are still struggling with COVID. So it is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2145. This is a declaration resolution of emergency conditions in the village of Corrales due to COVID-19. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
So I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All right, again, hearing none, I'm going to call for a voice vote. Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker,
Yes.
Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett.
Aye.
All right. Item number 9 is consideration, action, and approval for findings, conclusions, and decision on the Glover Clean and Lean objection to Resolution 2133. Randy, would you like to say a word or two?
Madam Mayor and councilors, these are the findings for the objection hearing that we had for Mr. Glover on 58 Rincon Drive on the Clean and Lean, and they accurately reflect the considerations of council, the findings and conclusions and the decision. Stand for questions.
Are there any questions for council? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to go ahead and approve the findings and conclusions and decision on the Glover Clean and Lean?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Waldman. I think I have a second, or is that a question?
Second.
A second, okay, it's a second. All right, so let's take a vote on that. Voice vote again. Counselor Burkett,
Aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we're now going to move on to item number 10. And all of the related items, discussion on the status of cannabis legislation. I'm going to, obviously, we have a number of petitions. We have 3 petitions, and we have also citizens wishing to do public comment. So I'm going to ask that we have our public comment right here on all matters related to cannabis. I think because of the number of people that signed up, I think we'll be able to give everyone 2 minutes. Now, the proponents of the petitions, and as I said, there are 3, you will have the time to present your petition and speak. I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. I think that'll be okay for all 3. Then we will have additional public comment, and then we will move into discussion of from our attorneys about various things they've done, various items that have come up in the state and our potential response, and then we'll move into those items. So at this point, Melanie, would you like to start with the first petition?
Yes, that will be Mr. Frank Wirtz.
Hi, thank you. I'm assuming you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'm going to read this petition. This was a petition which was generated to better understand the interest and the support for that particular ordinance, which would reinstate protections for A1 and A2 areas. It's titled Protective Petition for Corrales Zones A1 and A2 regarding commercial cannabis activity. To the Village of Corrales Mayor and councilors, we, the undersigned Village of Corrales residents, strongly oppose commercial cannabis operations next door to our homes or in our neighborhoods located in zones A1 and A2. We were protected from the effects of cannabis operations where we reside until the council revoked that protection in August 2021 by canceling out a law that had been on the books since 2018. Now, every resident is threatened by the possibility of adjacent cannabis operation. This activity has no place in residential areas. It stresses our water table, exposes residents to toxic gas emissions, light and noise pollution, threatens our community with higher crime, lowers property values, and affects the quality of life and livability of all Corraleños. In the 11/9/2021 council meeting, the governing body had an opportunity to take the first step to restore the prohibition of cannabis operations in zones A1 and A2, but chose to table the legislation rather than acting upon it. We therefore petition the governing body of the Village of Corrales to take the following actions. 1, add an item to the 12/14/2021 council meeting agenda to publish and post an ordinance protecting the A1 and A2 zones for commercial cannabis operations. 2, in the 12/14/2021 council meeting, approve the publishing and posting for public review of an ordinance prohibiting the cultivation, intentional growth, manufacture, and distribution of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in village zones A1 and A2, except for personal production of cannabis. In the first council meeting of January 2022, approve an ordinance prohibiting the cultivation, intentional growth, manufacture, and distribution of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in village zones A1 and A2, except for personal production of cannabis. Our electronic signatures represent our resolve in this matter as concerned citizens of the Village of Corrales. So that's the end of the petition as written. The electronic petition as submitted to you last week had a total of 844 signatures. As of tonight, our current signature count, and I will be forwarding this to you tomorrow, we now have 960 electronic petition signatures. In addition to this, there were some hard copies of the petition circulated, and we collected roughly 44, I think, 44 or 50 wet signatures. So this represents a tremendous amount of the effective voting population of Corrales. Something that I should mention is that we used change.org, the petition site, And what change.org does is when there's a single computer in a home, it stores that IP address, it saves a cookie. And unless you know how to go in and clear your history, no additional people from that residence can use that computer. I received complaints from several people saying that they wanted their spouses to sign as well, and they were unable to do so. So what we found is that this petition represents a significant cross-section of Corrales, and it is not partisan at all. It's signed by those who are Democrat, Republican, and declined to state. I looked through several of the names and compared them to a voting record that I have for the village of Corrales, and found that this does indeed cover a wide range of constituents. And so in conclusion of this petition, I would like to encourage you to pay attention to the raw number of the people who actually signed this. And so I'm finished with the petition now. I don't know if I'm still allowed to continue from a personal statement at this point. I do have a personal statement I would like to add.
You still have time, Mr. Wertz.
All right, thank you. So, one of the things that troubled me a little bit earlier today was when Mike Hammond started to talk about being a spokesperson for the small farmer in Corrales. One of the things that he neglected to tell us is that we have documentation that shows that Mike Hammond and Sally Olguin have collectively applied for a commercial well permit in order to support a commercial cannabis facility of 50 to 100 plants on properties that they are in control of. So I mentioned earlier that you've got to watch out a little bit for those with ulterior motives. And I'm not accusing anyone of an ulterior motive. I'm just saying that this was important information that should have been brought to light, and it was not. And that concludes what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Wertz. All right, I think we now have a different petition. Is that correct?
We do. Is Antonio Olguin on the meeting?
Hi, yes. My audio, am I going?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. Good evening. Hope it's going.
Hello.
I am a local farmer in this area. I work about 11 acres. I go from here, I go to the markets, and from here I go to markets in Corrales and Albuquerque, and I enjoy sharing food with many people here in the area, all the Corraleños, yes. And I got some information. About the cannabis ordinance and trying to stop bans. And through these last 5 years, there's been nothing more important than the 2 acres of my family farm that I've been trying to establish and then make a living out of. And we have an opportunity, I believe, to join an industry, a new industry for us, an industry that's been proven in other places. And I have a petition that I went around, and I've done the change.org as well. And I've gotten signatures from people from other places that have really no stake in Corrales. But I've also gotten my hard copies and then pen signatures from most of my neighbors and people from around here who also have differing ideas and views. And so I took it upon myself to organize this. And I have written a petition that I would like to read.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. The undersigned on this petition to the Village of Corrales' mayor and council believes that the farming community of Corrales must be preserved to maintain the character and economic viability as stated in the mission statement of the Farmland Preservation and Agriculture Commission ordinance as follows. The commission shall assist the village in providing for the preservation of farmland, open space, and view sheds, supporting the economic viability of agricultural businesses in the village, preserving the agricultural character of the village, and providing for the local production and marketing of agricultural products to provide a sustainable supply of local food and other agricultural products for the residents of the village. The locals and farm landowners I went and talked to, we've sort of had similar ideas. And local farmers, landowners have historically retained the right to grow any legal crop they determine to be viable part of its agricultural enterprise, whether it be for personal use, which is happening all through here. And now that it's gonna be more recreational and legal, it's gonna probably be more prominent as well with my neighbors and everybody else. and for personal use, commercial use, in order to sustain an income as a local business and to maintain a lifestyle that each property owner wishes to have. As in, we would like to do what we would like to do in the property that they would like to, right? And the state of New Mexico has determined that both medical, recreational cannabis is a legal crop that introduces an opportunity for small and disadvantaged farmers, such as myself and my mother, who I run a farm with, and to expand their income potential, provided they meet the requirements of the law. That includes local ordinance requirements. And at this moment, we urge the mayor and the council to consider the interest of the agricultural producers, not banning the option for the production of cannabis in zones A1 and A2, as this would be another blow and diminishment to the long-term viability of agriculture that continues to define this community. Despite the development pressures already consuming available farmland and open spaces, please vote to approve a sound, reasonable, and protective ordinance for the legal production of cannabis with the rural areas of the village. And that was my petition, but as a small farmer and a Corraleño, I understand that we don't have large warehouses here and the variances need to be certain ways and stuff like that. But when people have the opportunity to do it and people have the land and they are able to do it and they could do it and they could continue farming tomatoes and add another enterprise. And I just get a lot of that, and I could go out and go get more signatures, but I get a lot of that rhetoric from people that I've talked with in this community at the markets here, there, and everywhere else. And I just feel that I need to be involved, and it would be a disservice to the agricultural community if this was banned outright. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Olguin. Now I think we're moving on to our final petition.
Yes, and this one I've been asked to read on behalf of Bert Cox, Gary
All right.
Sims, Terry Eisenbart, and Nandini Kuhn.
Nandini, yes.
Yes, thank you. We, the undersigned, are leadership members of a grassroots political organization, Sandoval County Indivisible, that started in Corrales and now represents all of Sandoval County. All of the undersigned live in Corrales. Although none of us have strong personal opinions about cannabis cultivation in Corrales, nor do we have any financial interest in cannabis, we did all support the passing of the existing state law legalizing recreational cannabis production and consumption in New Mexico. We are writing to you because we are currently concerned that a vocal minority of Corrales residents, for a variety of reasons, is trying to push the village council to do something that it does not have the legal authority to do, and that in doing so, the council may be putting the village and its citizens in jeopardy to pay monetary damages in the future. Our understanding is that some people in the village are lobbying to have very extensive regulations of cannabis cultivation, and they essentially want the village government to ban commercial cannabis cultivation in the village. Some people are clearly very worked up about this, and a petition is being passed around. We have personally talked to a number of village residents and attorneys about this, including our state representative, Damon Eli. And we are convinced that though the village can write a legal ordinance regulating the cultivation of cannabis around the topics of time, place, and manner of the work of cultivation, the village cannot ban commercial cannabis, and under state law, it must be treated like any other agricultural product, alfalfa, green chili, squash, etc. Some of our fellow citizens do not seem to like that answer and want the village to defy state law, but that is a fool's game. We have been told by people we trust that if Corrales pursues this regulatory effort, the village will likely get sued, will likely lose, and will likely be on the hook for not insubstantial monetary damages. As usual, when the political outrage machine gets worked up, truth and facts often go out the window. If one thinks that cannabis is an evil product, then any justification to ban is legitimate, even if the stated justification is hyperbole or an outright lie. Some examples: cannabis cultivation is an ultra consumer of water. Somehow we don't ever hear that accusation thrown around to pecan farmers who use almost 1 gallon of water to produce 1 pecan. On the contrary, between 5 and 50 doses of marijuana can be cultivated using 1 gallon of water. Then there is the issue of smell, and cannabis certainly has a skunky odor at times during processing, which, by the way, can and should be regulated and controlled. That said, we don't talk about banning horses in Corrales, but we sure hear a lot of our neighbors and friends complaining about the smell of manure and the flies that come with having horses living next to you. We also don't talk about ridding our village of actual skunks, which are quite prevalent and certainly pungent. For the reasons above, we, the undersigned, do not support the petition drive to ban or strictly regulate cannabis cultivation in the village.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, at this point, we can move on to whatever comments, either written or human, that you want to allow.
Is Representative Damon Eli on the Zoom meeting?
No, I don't think he is.
Okay. Next on the list would be Fred Hashimoto.
Thank you. Please consider publishing and posting both amendments in resolutions 2140 and 2146 so they can get put together on the playing field. I cannot believe that our state, or for that matter, our village government, would purposely act to diminish our residential property values and quality of life for the profiteering of a very few that will not serve the public health, safety, and welfare of the village. Indeed, from the Cannabis Regulation Act, consistency with neighborhood uses is considered very important. How do neighborhoods feel about commercial cannabis in Corrales? 2017, they rejected a Verities Foundation proposal. In 2018, Council passed Ordinance 18002, which banned commercial cannabis in A1 and A2. And today, upwards of 1,000 petition signers have underscored that. In my 47 years here in the village, I've never seen such a singular community response. It's pretty clear how neighborhoods feel. I commend Village Hall for proposing an alternative amendment prohibiting commercial cannabis growing within 300 feet of any residence property line. This prohibiting is a seemingly new stance from Village Hall. Several weeks ago, it might have been considered a taking of property, etc., and a potential cause of lawsuits, payouts, and now prohibiting is advocated. So both amendment proposals have their prohibitions, which might be challenged in lawsuits. Should the village not pass any amendment just in order to try to avoid a lawsuit? No, no, no. I do hope that the village will support the will and character of Corrales neighborhoods that has been clearly and strongly demonstrated. And I believe the courts will follow suit. Let's put both amendment proposals in play and discuss them and then decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Eddie Chavez.
Eddie couldn't make it today.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next person on the list, Anthony Wagner.
And I believe that he got busy as well.
Okay, Eric Helowitz. I apologize if I butchered your last name.
Hello.
You have 2 minutes.
It's my first meeting, so thanks for having me. And everything that Fred said, I just want to kind of echo that. I support everything he said. I'm in Counselor Knight's area, and I have spoken to her about this, but I'm not for a complete ban of cannabis in Corrales. I just don't want to have it on, grown next door to me commercially. And if it can't be stopped, next door to me, maybe there could be some sort of limit on how much is grown, maybe 25 plants for A1 and maybe 45 to 50 plants on A2. That's just where I'm at. I bicycle a bunch in the Corrales Bosque, and when I go down to like Siphon Beach area, I can smell it. It's really bad, and it's such a pretty area down there, but it's taken it. I knew I was going to smell horses when I moved into the area, because Corrales is a kind of horse capital of New Mexico, but I didn't think I'd be smelling cannabis. And again, I'm not anti-cannabis. I'm not anti-growing it in commercial areas. I just don't want it grown commercially next door to me. That's everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Diana Keller. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? You're muted, ma'am.
Unmute.
There
Okay.
you go.
All right. I had to cut and paste a little bit because I didn't want to repeat things other people have said, but I'm sure that the council, anyway, greetings to the mayor and the council people. I'm sure the council is aware of the negative effects of the Comodina medical grow houses have had in Corrales Del Norte subdivision. This nuisance must be disclosed by realtors when trying to sell a property. And I'm sure there are many people that don't want to buy a property with an active cannabis manufacturing plant next to them. They speak of the horrible smell of this hallucinogenic drug, which could be considered a pharmaceutical. I don't know when it got changed from a non-farm item to a farm item. I think that was just recently. So let me take you on an imagined vision of the future for our village as I see it. Just a few of the possible things that we might have to protect ourselves from if the council fails to do so. Our vision: closely planted tall hedge trees to block our view of the manufacturing facilities, which will necessarily have tall fences, lights, fans, noxious odors all day, every day. Noise canceling background apps such as white noise to create a racket that blocks exterior noise. Smell: leaving swamp coolers off during the summer, not going out in the yard anymore. Crime: hire our own 24/7 security people, tall security fence, guard dog. Traffic: installation of four-way stops in order to monitor the speed and kind of traffic entering the village along Corrales Road, which is already burdened with heavy traffic from Rio Rancho, possibly requiring at some point widening of the road. Water: import huge water cubes or hook up to city water when our wells drop precipitously. Our water table has already declined in the past few decades, leaving dying trees behind. The state engineer's office may have no compunction against issuing permits to people who have
Your
located.
time's up.
Oh, all right. That didn't seem, was it 2 minutes? All right.
Yeah. Okay, next on the list, we have George Wright. George Wright, are you on the?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I am on. Thank you, Mayor and Councilor. I was supposed to do something under I-12, and I understand that wasn't allowed, so I request a little bit more time under I-10 in just a few seconds. Regarding concerns that have been voiced in the past by a lot of people, including the village attorney and the mayor, regarding lawsuit concerns, I believe that good lawyering and stern political action will successfully defend the village. I engaged a premier law firm, the Rody Law Firm, to give an opinion. Their weight of cited references and legal precedents reinforced my confidence in the ability to successfully defend the village. Councilor Clouser and I found that in 2018, when a cannabis company threatened legal action, they backed off and went away after we passed the 1802 ban. I suspect we'll see a similar result after you restore the ban under this ordinance. Could someone sue? Of course, but according to the law firm's legal opinion, the Rody firm's legal opinion, the legal challenge won't be successful. They say that explicitly because any takings claim would not rise to the category of substantial, which is required under the takings clause. I hope that your primary concern will be in favor of the way of life for 8,800 villagers, and that you vote in favor of the ban, and that you vote in favor of the ban. Constituent support, as you've heard, is overwhelming, and the 1,000 petition signers are more than half the number of voters who elected the mayor in 2018. Now, for the covering of I-12, you laugh, it's true.
Well, I know, but never mind. It's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
Restore my time, please. Regarding Publish and Post. Now, I used to sit next to a two-term mayor and one-term councilor, Phil Gasteyer. We had a vigorous debate one time about an ordinance, Publish and Post. He was against it. When we got all done, everybody voted. Phil voted for the ordinance. I said, Phil, what are you doing? He said, well, there's no downside to Publish and Post. No downside to Publish and Post. I always try to vote for a Publish and Post unless there's something extraordinary, because that just gives me more public input to help me make my decision. So that's why I'm encouraging.
And that's your time, sir.
Publish and Post. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next on the list is Elaine Manicki.
Yes, she was.
Yes, you are. I can hear you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors, and village staff. Have just a brief comment. The Corrales governing body should be concerned about how much the residents will have to pay in the loss of property value and quality of life. The village has insurance to cover for possible lawsuit damages, but homeowners insurance will not cover the damage for what the village can do to us. Shouldn't the village be concerned about the welfare and property of its residents? The commercial insurance and state regulation requirements for grow houses tells the story that this kind of production does not belong in neighborhoods. Unfortunately, the state of New Mexico did not pass a well thought out Cannabis Act, of which I might add, Mr. Damon Eli was a huge proponent and worked very hard on getting that done, which would, among other things, allow for municipalities to opt out of the industrial marijuana industry. Insurance for the grower is based on how much they have to lose. We residents have to endure this assault when we should be having the backing of our local insured government unafraid to make the statement, putting the burden on the state to craft an act protecting its residents. How this affects the neighborhood is not considered unless through the grower's liability. By then, the damage is already done or it is not recognized as a liability. Your consideration of these thoughts is greatly appreciated. After all, you live in the village too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Manicki.
Next, we have Ann Garfield. Ann Garfield, if you're out there, you're on mute.
Hi there. Hey there, can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, so hello, councilors and mayor. I live at the north end of Corrales, and I urge you to act tonight before it's too late to protect Corrales from marijuana growers in A1 and A2 zones. It does not matter how many times this industry keeps saying they are agricultural. I will never, ever believe this. This industry only belongs in commercial zones, period. Why would you allow an industry that must have security fencing, commercial wells, security lighting that destroys New Mexico dark skies in any place other than a commercial zone? How can you not protect the residents of Corrales from the threat of increased crime that marijuana attracts? Because marijuana is still illegal at the federal level, they can only deal with cash. How can neighborhoods feel safe around this type of cash flow traveling back and forth on our roads? It takes 2 minutes on the internet to pinpoint exactly where a marijuana cultivator is located in Corrales, making the surrounding neighbors a possible target for crime. Marijuana has somehow attained a privileged status as it can irrigate year-round, while traditional farmers must cut back on alfalfa and other crops due to the lack of irrigation water. My family's apple orchard is dying due to the MRGCD limited irrigation seasons we've had for the past 2 years, while marijuana growers can water 24/7 and have multiple crops year-round, while the traditional farmers are scraping tooth and nail to stay alive. Our northern neighbors in Peña Blanca and Chile have experienced a 436% increase of water used by marijuana growers that have been reported by the New Mexico Rural Water Association. I urge you all on the council to act now and keep marijuana grow houses out of A1 and A2 zones before it is too late. Do not allow our community to be taken hostage by those voices threatening lawsuits to intimidate us. I urge you to take a strong stand by reinstating parts of the ordinance 18-002 that restricts cultivation of cannabis to commercially zoned areas only. Also consider our future generations and ensure the legacy of Corrales continues to live on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Mr. Kurt Flora.
Good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. I've been growing marijuana most of my life, and growing it outside, it does not take the water that everybody keeps talking about. That's utterly ridiculous. I would like to just say that I'm for the farmers of small business and stuff like that. I I can see limiting the production of the marijuana to possibly 100 plants per acre. The 300-foot boundary, no properties in Corrales are 300-foot wide. There's not a property I know of that is 300-foot wide. I would suggest that you do it by the acre, you know. I would also suggest that all marijuana be grown organically to keep the chemicals out of the groundwater and out of everything else. So if you're going to have marijuana cultivation and stuff like that and manufacturing, let's keep it organic. Okay, let's not add any chemicals to this stuff. Marijuana has been grown for centuries organically. You don't need all the chemicals. As for the smell, there are filters that do filter the air. All the air can be filtered and not the smell. So I believe, you know, to keep the small business going, farming with 100 plants per acre is the way to go on this. This is crazy, you know, that's the way to go with this. 100 plants per acre. You get to your filters for your smell, you grow it organically. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Terry Eisenbart.
Madam Mayor, councilors, and staff, good evening. Let me get up my note here. I'd like to raise a few points for the councilors to consider as we work our way through to a resolution. There are many misunderstandings out there, and I'm hearing some of them repeated tonight about cannabis cultivation in Corrales. First of all, it sounds like some folks know, but there are 2 legally permitted grow houses that already exist in Corrales. One's been around for many years and there's not been an increase in crime or security concerns about this issue. Corrales already, number 2, Corrales already regulates lighting at night. Grow houses will have to be fully darkened so that their bright lights cannot be seen at all from outside. Number 3, the smell from cannabis, as Mr. Flora mentioned, can be controlled by a number of proven methods. And lastly, a permit to legally grow commercial cannabis, the grower has to have water rights. As far as I know, there are very few residents in Corrales that have groundwater rights. So the only people who can get a cannabis permit are residents who, number 1, have an irrigation ditch access, or 2, have applied for and maintained a water right with the state engineer's office. Just because you have a well does not mean you have a water right. A domestic well per household is allowed, but that does not consist of a right to use that water except for normal household use. The implication here is that if neighbors are not ditch irrigators, there is 0% chance that a cannabis farm is going to spring up next to your home. And especially the many folks west of Loma Larga that live in the sand hills that are going to be even less at any kind of a risk for such a thing to happen. So I'm not a signer for the letter that went in to refute the position on the petition that was heavily signed, yes, but also heavily financed by we don't know whom.
Your time is up, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Next, Catherine Bogart. Is Catherine on our meeting?
I saw, well, I don't know if she's still here.
Going once, going twice. Okay, next, Jer Shanovsky.
I think that might be me.
Yes, sorry if I've mispronounced your last name.
No problem. My name is Philip Shanosky. I'm 26 years old. I'm a longtime resident of Corrales. I grew up here attending Corrales Elementary. I'm ultimately a businessman. My family's owned 2 businesses. Some of you may have used us, Advanced American Construction and Advanced American Insurance. We're local business owners. We've employed dozens of families here locally to work with us and better our community. And we're looking to expand into commercial cannabis growth in a organic, community-focused and ecologically focused manner, using solar energy, avoiding the use of harsh chemicals and such harsh additives. We believe that using indoor growing operations as well as the usage of filters in order to cut down on smell and proven methods is possible, and we're proposing to grow on our own property which we reside on. And of course, we don't want it to smell awful all day, every day as well, and we don't want to have you guys not be able to go on your porch and enjoy your evening. So I agree with the idea of limiting growth maybe to 100 plants per acre. I definitely, as a resident of Corrales, do not want to see mega greenhouses with thousands of plants that stink as well. I believe there's a right way to do this for the residents of Corrales to have a profitable nature that can help support us as a community and also avoid these downfalls of negative impact to the community, as long as the companies which are operating here are keeping the community's best interest in mind. There will always be companies that come in and attempt to exploit a community for everything they can get with no regards. And I believe we should take measures to prevent such companies from coming into the community, but locally owned and operated cannabis growth and dispensaries, I believe should be allowed in Corrales, as it's a growing industry slated to be worth over $100 billion by the end of 2030.
And that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next comment was one that was emailed and was asked to be read from Daniel Borneo. To be brief concerning the growing of cannabis in the village, as a Corrales resident and vegetable grower for the past 21 years, I do not want anyone telling me what I can and cannot grow. My property cost a pretty penny even 21 years ago, and I bought it so I could farm. If I want to grow cannabis to sell, then I want to be able to do it without fear of penalty. Thank you. The next comment is from Court Kuntz and says, Mayor Roque and council members, you must pass Resolution 2140. You know, at least 900 Corraleños signed a petition in favor of prohibiting commercial pot production in A1 and A2 residential zones. I don't know why this was not part of the agenda. I do know the majority of Corrales residents do not want commercial pot operations anywhere near their homes or school. If you don't pass Resolution 2140, we could quite possibly become the only municipality in New Mexico, maybe the United States, that allows commercial pot production in our residential neighborhoods. Passing Resolution 2140 is the beginning of the way and may be the last chance for you as our council members and mayor to get us out of this disaster. Next comment was from Steve Murtha. My name is Steve Murtha, and my wife Alicia and I have lived in Corrales for over 26 years and have raised our children here. I am a licensed real estate broker who has been continuously active in my profession here locally for over 35 years. We have no objection to the personal use and cultivation of marijuana for recreational and/or medical purposes in and on one's residence. We are strongly opposed, however, to commercial cultivation in residential areas that are zoned A1 and A2, and any other zone designations that apply to residential property use in the village. Aside from problems associated with increased traffic, noise, and odors that affect many in proximity to such operations, the attractive nuisance of commercial cultivation will attract potential crime and the resulting spillover of non-village people who have no investment or concern for the security of our rural lifestyle that so many have worked hard to preserve. 3577 Loma Larga and 119 Veronica Court are just two addresses on applications for commercial cultivation permits that are in close proximity to our home, among, quote, dozens more that have submitted applications throughout every other residential part of Corrales. Upon greenlighting this commercial exploitation of our precious natural resources and our security and comfort, Fire Department Chief Martinez might want to consider installing a much larger water piping system along Loma Larga, as there is the strong potential for residential use domestic wells to run dry, and hence the critical need for city water to flow out of our taps once the commercial growers suck the aquifer empty. As a real estate professional who has assisted individuals and families with the purchase and sale of their homes in the village for many years, approving the commercial marijuana grow industry will have significant negative impact on everyone's property value, an undesirable but inevitable effect of our elected leaders ignoring their constituents' welfare in favor of giving preference and support to an industry that will impact our home values, personal safety, health, and enjoyment we deserve and have come to expect as property owners and stakeholders in Corrales. We urge our mayor and the councilors to heed the needs of and the pleas by the village residents that they serve, and not enable or permit commercial cultivation of marijuana in our residential neighborhoods. And last comment of the evening comes from Thomas Graham. His statement is very short. I, Tom Graham, a resident of Corrales, do oppose any measure or ordinance that promotes or allows any commercial growth of cannabis within residential areas of the village. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that, Melanie, is that everyone that signed up to speak?
That concludes the public comment portion of this section of our agenda.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for all of your thoughts and opinions. Let's move on now to our counsel, our legal counsel, for an update.
Thank you, Mayor. As we all know, this is a moving picture, and the state is taking actions that we want to keep you abreast of, and let you know what's happening with state regulations while we try to do this very important task of sorting out what the best way to deal with growing marijuana under, as now allowed by state law within the village, how that's going to look. The first thing that happened was there have been new regulations come out from the Licensing and Regulation Department on manufacturing. So when we get this piece done, we are going to then be briefing you on what the state regulations require and how they've imposed or implemented the manufacturing portion of the Cannabis Regulation Act on us. The good news for that is most, if not all, of the uses in the manufacturing section will be in the commercial neighborhood commercial zone within the village. They aren't going to be in A1 and A2, although the state is discussing simple things like packaging of marijuana would almost be the equivalent of a home occupation. So those are the things we want to discuss with you, and we may need to tweak our manufacturing regulations in the new year. Second thing that happened, and Corey Strife, my associate, can go into the details of it. There's a new draft of a regulation that's come out that is essentially on its face allowing an applicant for a license to go straight through Licensing and Regulation Department and it receive the license without first bringing it to the local government. Obviously, that's a problem. The solution should have been pretty clear. Under the Liquor Control Act, no new liquor license is issued, for example, until it gets issued with a provisional license until it's approved on its zoning and placement by the local authority. So that is obviously the partnership that needs to happen here, but this new regulation isn't proposing that on its face. And so we would like the permission, and we'll be talking to the mayor about it, to write a comment about that we need to include a partnership with the local governments and the Department of Regulation for doing these licensures of all types of marijuana uses. After those, Corey, is there anything else that we should discuss specifically about what the state is doing with regulations now, or should we go on to the specific agenda items?
At this point, Randy, no. The most critical thing, of course, being that future amendment that we should most certainly discuss. But in terms of upcoming modifications to the regulations, no. At this point, they're mostly just focused on filling out those regulations that did not exist yet. So manufacturing, couriers, retail. So those are in the works.
Thank you. And as we wrap this up, councilors, we would stand for questions on these proposed regulations and also the specific items that are on your agenda tonight. And concerns that have been expressed again and again, so I'm not going to belabor them. Our concern always for the village is to try to guide the village to the best potential regulation of a new use like this that the state has imposed upon us, so that we could successfully regulate it to limit the effects upon the community while allowing for the use to occur as the state law requires. That's why we're in this a little bit of a rock and a hard place. And just historically, what the state law, the Cannabis Regulation Act, is missing is it does not deal with our situation. In Corrales, every agricultural lot in the community is also a residential lot. That is not accounted for under the state regulation, except that it says we can reasonably regulate density. We can regulate time, place, and manner regulations. But the fact that, and just to clarify, the Right to Farm Act, which was the basis for our, one of the bases for our efforts to regulate, to preserve farmland, like we were just talking about on the prior measures, specifically recognizes the right on agricultural land for commercial agriculture. So state law has not been our friend in this attempt to adequately regulate cannabis. And so what we have on our agenda tonight was our work on the solution proposed by Councilor Murray that had been in place in 2018 before cannabis was completely decriminalized in New Mexico, and growth of cannabis for recreational purposes, commercial growth was allowed. So that is the A1 and A2 ban. And that was tabled at the last meeting. So the next item on the agenda after this discussion will be a motion as to whether to take that off the table or not. And then the next two items would be, if it's taken off the table, would be a vote to publish vote on a resolution to publish 21-40 so that we would have a vote on that in January. And finally, the item that we had been working on to try to create the most rigorous regulation of cannabis we could within the village, while still tying it to a reasonable distance. We used the distance requirement of the 300 feet that was already allowed in the act. We believe that helps us find that reasonable density, because we have a unique and special situation. Our agricultural land is our residential land. And because of that, the only way to separate residential uses and this commercial agricultural use of marijuana, because as everyone has stated, and as the attachments to our agenda show, it does have an impact on residential communities. So we believe that this is the, quote, most reasonable way to regulate it. I want to caution everyone, it is still subject to a challenge, just like the ban is. We do not know, as some of the people testified earlier in the public comment, they stated that the 300 feet would basically not allow them to grow. So any of those people could challenge this regulation. So we aren't out of the woods on a legal challenge, but we feel that we have a rational and reasonable basis to set this 300-foot distance requirement from residences. The other thing that it does that the ban in A1 and A2 doesn't address is our the only commercial area we have within the village is also residential. It's an overlay, essentially. It's neighborhood commercial. And so we have applied that 300-foot distance requirement to those residences in that area as well, Otherwise, there will be cannabis production. It can only exist within that area, and therefore there would be a concentration of it around the residences in that area, as well as the A1 and A2 properties abutting those neighborhood commercial areas. So those were our concerns. The thing that we also did was we took the Denver, Colorado odor regulations and essentially adopted them into our nuisance odor regulation. And we believe that with that, we have a mechanism to affect all growers. It will apply to existing grows as well as previous grows. We cannot eliminate grandfathered grows through this regulation, so the current grows that exist will be there. And if there are any permits or applications that were in process for within the village, then those would be able to continue as well. But we do have the moratorium now, and there won't be any new applications. I urge your consideration on taking the measured approach, just because although I have great amount of respect for the Rohde law firm, they don't represent the village, and I'm earning my paycheck representing you, and I believe that the regulation of the 300 feet would be the most likely to survive a challenge, and that's the only reason that I find it a better avenue to follow, along with the fact that we are not leaving behind the residents who live in the neighborhood commercial zone. Corey, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
One of the things I did want to bring up was that one of the concerns that the councilors had voiced at our last meeting was that one of the issues with the ordinance as it was enacted earlier this year was that the current understanding of the filtration technology is carbon filters. However, what that did not do was future-proof it. So it meant that as technology changed, we were going to end up having to come back and amend to reflect whatever that most current technology was, say maybe 5 or 10 years from now. So what I did do in this version was create a future-proof to make it the best available technology for filtration, to make sure that the odor mitigation stays consistent with whatever is going to be that odor technology in the future. And this is going to be something that will apply whether it's somebody who's going to be growing commercially in a commercial district or in the residential. So regardless of which way we go, I think that that's one thing that needs to be made very clear, that we have every intention of making sure that odor is controlled.
And Mayor, with that, we could ask questions now of if councilors have any, or you do, or we could get into the discussion of each individual agenda item and ask those questions at that time. It's your choice.
I think, well, why don't we try to, I'd like to ask the counselors to go ahead and ask you questions that they have at this time. Counselor Parker, and then Counselor Knight.
Mayor Roque, councilors, Mr. Audio, it seems like there's somewhat of a moving target happening up in Santa Fe, and I think Corey, you addressed it a little bit on there. But is there the opportunity for us to put in kind of plant the seed in the ear of the folks up there to put in the language that would allow us to look out for the residential agricultural lot, or to force them, or not force them, but ask them to account for the situation that we're in? And the second part of the question is, if there is that opportunity, or you think changes are still being made there, would it make sense to just carry on these two separate ordinances? Because from the last meeting to this meeting, it seems like some very serious things have changed, and I believe there's a potential for that to happen before we vote on this at whenever the next meeting is. So I'm not sure if we should be leaving behind one or the other of these ordinances at this point. Did my question make sense?
Yes, Councilor Parker, it did. The first part of it, licensing and regulation department is adopting the regulations to put in place and put into effect the Cannabis Regulation Act. The problem we have was with the failure of the legislature to adequately define how much authority local governments like ours have, particularly in a situation where we are put into this very difficult box where all of our agricultural land is also residential. So I believe that's a legislative fix. Under the regulations, I don't think they're going to give us any relief because it would be going beyond the scope of the statute, which they don't have the authority to do. I believe we take our best shot at it. And if we're challenged, we would then have to fight our hardest to support the action we took based upon our unique status as a historically zoned community with agricultural and residential occurring concurrently.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Audio, I have just a couple questions. We talked earlier in different sessions about how the state regulates, and because they regulate certain things, maybe we could regulate. Listening to the pros and cons that people suggested during the meeting, both sides talked about limiting the number of plants that people could have. Now, I think the 300 feet is a great idea, but can we do more as far as limiting the number of plants? Again, both sides, pro and con, talked about limiting that number, and the state limits the number of plants an individual can grow to 6, a couple can grow 12. So since they're already naming the number of plants people can grow individually, I was hoping maybe we could also, as a municipality, do the same thing. And then I also wanted to address, is there anything that we can put in the regulations about farmland preservation land that we've already purchased, that it was for open space? And if there are bigger greenhouses on those properties, that is an open space. Is there addendums we can put onto those agreements with those people that we've already purchased the property with? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Knight. I'll take your questions in the order you asked them. I think there is room to talk about limits on the number of plants per acre, and we did some of that in our regulations already. Corey, do you have those numbers handy about what we currently have put in place?
I don't, Randy, but what I can say is that I do know very well by heart the way that the state has regulated the plant limits as far as the grows go. And so one thing I sort of want to bear in mind and also caution at the same time is that the state very specifically created a micro business as a 200 or fewer mature plants. The caveat to that being, interestingly, in the regulations, they also allowed for a micro business to have 2 tiers of plants, one being 100 or fewer and the other being 200 or fewer. So I think to Councilor Knight's point, and to echo Randy, I think that we're probably well within our purview to be looking at that 100 plant level for a micro producer instead of the 2, or perhaps setting different limitations on both of those tiers. So that, yeah, that is certainly something that we can take into consideration with a little bit more of an eye.
Thanks, Corey, and I agree that I think that we could combine with the regulations that we're looking at some smaller limits for smaller lots, because by their nature, as some of the testimony showed, there's very narrow lots and there's very little setbacks between them. So it is, I think, appropriate to limit the number of plants on those smaller lots. You know, it's a gross 1 acre with the roads taken out, so you're at 0.85 approximate acres net buildable, and then So if you've got a house on it already and then you do a grow, the distances get pretty close. So that is definitely something that we can take a look at.
Oh,
Let me finish the second part of your answer. I'm sorry, in regard to the farmland. I looked pursuant to your request. I did look at our language of our deeds, and there are restrictions on any building in the agricultural area of those lots. So only in the building envelope, which is where the house is located, and a barn, could there be any type of enclosed grow. They cannot happen on the area that we purchased from them, because would be a building in that otherwise agricultural area.
that's correct. They're severely limited in what structures could be put upon that property. Any other, Councilor Murray.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Councilors. So in your proposed ordinance and resolution 2146, you're beginning to think that your 300 foot to the nearest property line would be more restrictive than what the total ban would be. I think Mr. Flora kind of maybe hit the nail on the head that we don't have enough properties in the village that exceed 300 feet to the nearest property line. So, and also the second part of that is the requirement of a property owner to waive the distance requirement. Now, does that apply to every property owner that might surround a potential grow? And who monitors that? Who does one waiver or one person saying no override everybody else who might say yes? I mean, I've got some concerns about the language that might need to be flushed out. Also, I was a little bit concerned too, back up into where you talk about odor and you talk about taking a volume to be diluted with 7 or more volumes of odor-free air. By the time somebody got up to take that, that might not be an issue. So it depends on certain times of the day when that odor might be detected. And to get somebody out there to take it as sample might be an issue, and it might not, it might fail the test. I don't know. It also seems to me, I was looking at one other thing too. Oh, why did you strike out the state requirement for the water rights from the state engineer and just put in a generic language? So maybe I'll start with those questions.
I'll try to go back to the beginning. If I've forgotten a piece of it, just let me know. So first issue was the 300 feet. Well, the reason the 300 feet was used is because that is the distance that's already approved by the state for separation of schools and daycares. There really is, as we've discussed, we've talked about many options we've had for separation of residences from large grows of marijuana. And every option has its issues. The 300 feet, we believe, is the most plausible one because A, it doesn't prohibit people from consolidating and purchasing property into a size that would give them that 300 feet. And the waiver provision, to get to your question about that, is based upon the idea that there are citizens of the community that will not object. They may have their 12 plants and it's not going to bother them that their next door neighbor has a micro grow. And yes, the answer is yes to your question. It would be everyone within 300 feet that would have to sign the waiver. And that would be when they make their permit application with the village, that determination would be made. And then it is annually renewed upon the licensure requirement, the renewal of the license from the state by that grower. So if they did an open grow, let's say a small farmer tried an open grow, got his neighbors to agree, we don't have a problem with that. The next year, if it proved to be a problem, then we wouldn't have to, they could remove and revoke their waiver. So it's a way that we can help those folks who are living in an area of the village who don't object to this. And still, that is another way we can show that we are being reasonable, that we aren't outright saying no, because we can't outright prohibit a licensee from growing. That law specifically states that. So you have to reasonably regulate. And that's what this effort's all about. So I hear your concerns. I share them. It's just that this seemed to us to be the best avenue given the challenges we have.
Did Corey want to talk about Councilor Murray's concerns about the odor? Test?
Sure. I had two things to say. One is to the question about the water. And the reason that that was altered was because it had been mentioned to us by Katie Duhigg that there are alternate methods that a producer can have evidence of a water right. For example, the language as it was written didn't contemplate, for example, somebody who lived along an acequia and the acequia association gave the water to that grower. So saying specifically that the state engineer had to be the one to sign off on it didn't contemplate all the possible avenues for water. What it doesn't do is waive the requirement that the grower must have the water right, and it certainly doesn't undo the state requiring evidence of that satisfactory water right prior to getting a license. So whether they get evidence of water through the acequia association, through a commercial water hauler, through the office of the state engineer, what we're concerned about is that they have evidence that they have the water and not so much where necessarily it came from. And so that was an amendment that was brought to us as a concern because it didn't include all of those possible avenues for water. And then the second thing, most certainly about the odor, and your point is certainly well taken, Councilor Murray, and that is actually the reason that there is also the provision that subsection C2 that allows for the village, if they receive 5 or more complaints from individuals in separate households or businesses within the village within that 30-day time frame regarding that same odor complaint. For example, the neighbor to the north, if 5 different households all have a problem within that same month, whether or not someone was able to come out and measure the air for compliance, those 5 complaints would still trigger a nuisance. And so they could be enforced against because of those individual complaints.
Yeah, but Corey, the other thing in that same section under 3, you list about a half a dozen activities, and probably I'd say half of them don't pertain to the village. I mean, are you trying to say that it's all inclusive, or what do I want to say, that there can be other activities that might be a nuisance other than what's listed?
Sure. So Councilor Murray, the reason that those specific activities are listed is largely because those were what the city of Denver identified as things that are just inherently smelly by nature. So whether we have, currently a pet food manufacturer in the village of Corrales, if there were to be one in the future, this provision would apply to them. And specifically subsection 3, if you sort of go above, the purpose of that is that if any of those uses want to move in, they actually have to provide the village with an odor control plan. And so it's not picking on cannabis because it's inherently smelly, but also pet food manufacturers and asphalt and shingle coating and so on and so forth. Those are all activities that other places have recognized as inherently smelly. So even though they may not exist and it may not apply to the village at the moment, if they were to move in, they must provide that odor control plan. So that's the reason why those are there. Whether or not they're a use that you ever foresee being there, it's just so that way they're protected in the event that you guys end up with somebody who wants to try and come in.
Yeah, but the problem I have with that is if we allow the 300-foot exclusion throughout A1 and A2, those don't apply because, one, we don't allow commercial operations in A1 and A2. And that's what they are, basically. So I'm a little concerned about, the way that language is structured. And, I understand where you're coming from, but Denver is not Corrales, as somebody has always said. We're our own place, and Denver is not us. So I have some real concerns about that and that language.
Councilor Murray, can I say something here? Because I just want to clarify this. I think under the Farm Act and our zoning, in fact, agricultural, commercial agriculture is agriculture. And so that's been another part of our problem, if you want to look at it that way, that they are entitled to grow crops for personal or commercial use. Am I incorrect on that, Randy?
That's correct, Mayor. And it is our problem. It is the reason this is an issue, is because it is an allowed agricultural crop to be sold commercially, like hay or anything else. It just comes with all these gifts along with it that we have to deal with.
Mayor, Randy, let me just inject this too, but I think the courts have also stipulated that a person is not entitled to use the land as they see fit, and that a municipality can impose limits on what can be done on that land. And it has been successfully challenged in courts. And whether you agree or not with Mr. Royval's letter, I think that the court cases he has identified says that the courts will uphold that we are not doing a taking, and that the language is narrow enough in scope that he can do about anything else. But we want, the municipality might just preclude having cannabis grown on A1 and A2 zones.
Councilor Burkett, and then I think Councilor Knight or Councilor Lucero had a point. So we'll start with Councilor Burkett, okay? Thank you.
Mayor, thank you. Couple quick questions just for clarification. Reading through this version of the bill, multiple times it says 300 feet from the nearest residence. And I just want to make sure that we do make that clear that it's 300 feet from any residence. Because it does specifically call out nearest in at least two of the mentionings of 300 feet. In one of them, it says any residence, but want to make sure that's clear. My second question is hours of operation. It says there will be no establishment allowed to operate between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. How do we define operation? Is having grow lights on and fans on considered operation? So I think there's some vaguity there that needs to be addressed as well. And then in one of the mentionings of 300 feet, it specifically says from the corner of a facility. But if there was to be a large outside grow, which is highly unlikely, but just in case, would the 300 feet apply to that, and how, if so?
Who wants to answer that?
Thank you, Councilor Burkett. First, it is properly read any residence. If there are multiple residents within the 300 feet, then the only way that's going to be allowed is if there was a waiver given by each of those residents. So yes, we will make sure that is cleared up. If there's a open grow, it would be from the nearest point of the grow, any residents within 300 feet of the grow. If it's an outside grow. And then with the operation, I don't think it contemplates that it would just be at night when the marijuana is doing its thing and growing, that would be part of the operation. But we will clarify that to draw that distinction. I think what we're talking about is there's not going to be farming activities being conducted like there won't be production activities in the manufacturing area or retail sales. So I think that's the way that we would clean that up. And this is exactly why we need to go through this, because we are attempting to create from whole cloth a new way to regulate for our particular problem here. And so we appreciate all the comments.
Councilor Lucero, I think you had something you wanted to say.
I think Councilor Burkett's question answered it.
Okay.
Other than the fact that more specifically in your resolution 2146, you referenced cannabis producer 300 feet, and I couldn't find a cannabis producer definition in the resolution. So I was just wondering, because it says cannabis producer 300 feet from any residence or otherwise. What would define a cannabis producer? And one, and two, to the issue of of the odors. I do believe, you know, and I'm kind of curious of what the remedy would be after 5 complaints, but and otherwise. But my issue, I think, would be just due to the fact that, you know, we do have grows here in Corrales that, from what I understand, have the latest and greatest odor minimizers here in Corrales, but yet I'm still getting complaints at midnight on a Saturday night. What's the remedy when they do have the latest, but yet that odor is still getting out? Do we have anything? Do we address that in any way?
Thank you, Councilor Lucero. First of all, the cannabis producer, it means a grower of cannabis. So it would be a commercial grow of cannabis. A producer is a commercial grower. So that's what the 300 feet would be separating, whether it be an open grow or a grow occurring within a greenhouse. That is a producer.
Is that called out in the statute? Is that definition
It's-
called out in the statute?
It's in the statute,
Yes.
and it's in the part of our ordinance that was already adopted. We define producer. So that's that issue. And Councilor Lucero, what we end up with at the end of any day on enforcement of our ordinances is turning to our enforcement officers for that enforcement. We've talked about, if you recall from our last meeting, we were talking about the mechanical sniffer that is available and used in Denver to determine these quantities of odor in the air of marijuana grows. And we may need to get some technical assistance through a contract for people to operate those at first. And the other thing is, we have all of the means to enforce against a nuisance at our disposal that we always have. We can bring them to municipal court if it's a simple infraction. Or we can, if it's very serious and it's continuing, we can take them to district court and get a court order requiring them to stop. We can also turn them over to the state for violation of their licensing requirements and get the state to suspend their license. So those would be our enforcement options.
Councilor Knight, I think you had, thank you, Councilor Lucero. I think your questions were answered.
Yeah, I just had one quick thing. After I read through the Rhodey opinion piece, the thing that I underlined was that, you know, in our ordinances, it says A1 and A2. While he was making his opinion, he kept talking about A1 and rural residential zones. So I don't think that the zoning that he was talking about is the same as what we have. We don't have residential zones. We have A1 and A2 and we have commercial and historic, but I think unless we, you know, have to change the zoning sometime down the road. But at this point, it just says A1 and A2. It doesn't say A1 and A2 residential, even though that's what it is. So I just wanted to bring that.
And thank you, Councilor Knight. That's one of, as we keep saying, the historic zoning that we have has served us very well because it gives us a rural community with residences and agriculture existing together, but it doesn't fit well with this new Cannabis Regulation Act. And that's where we're at. So very good point.
All right. Yes, Councilor Murray.
Mayor, I move that we terminate discussion and move on to item, what's the next item up? 11?
Yes, 11. I think that's a good idea. Is there any objection to moving on to item 11 at this time? All right, hearing none. Item 11 is possible action to take from the table Resolution 2140. This is a resolution directing the publication of a notice of meeting and intent to consider of an ordinance amending ordinance 2106, prohibiting the production, manufacture, and retail of cannabis and cannabis products in the A1 and A2 zone. Do I have such a motion? Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. No surprise, right?
No surprise, no.
Okay, so I move that we take from the table Resolution 2140 and all that was entailed with it.
Fine. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Kevin Lucero. Counselor Lucero. I'm going to take a voice vote on this. Kevin Lucero?
Aye.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir. Did I miss a step?
no, there's no issue with taking this off the table now. Before we get into the next item, we need to talk about that issue of when we will have a full council present. I'm assuming everybody's going to want to be there. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but just finish your vote.
That's all right. I will finish the vote. So Kevin Lucero,
Aye.
Tyson Parker,
Aye.
William Oldman,
Aye.
Stuart Murray,
Aye.
Zachary Burkett,
Aye.
Mel Knight.
Aye.
All right. So that item has been removed from the table. And then we will move on to number 12, which is possible consideration, action, and approval of resolution 2140. Now, this is probably where, before we take a vote on that, I'd like to have our council explain what our options are at this point.
Well, because this involves the publication of the date of the hearing, I think we should check with yourself and the other counselors, because I think everybody's going to want to be there for this vote. We have to go out the legal required number of days, so that would put it into January at a minimum, but the meeting's currently scheduled for the 11th. So are we going to have any issues with that date on the next two items?
Yes, I see Counselor Parker's hand up.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I would have an issue with the 11th.
May I ask you what dates before that you would be able to attend and what dates after that?
The 9th, and then the 10th through the 19th would not be possible, and then the 20th would be possible.
So only the 9th or before the 9th?
The window of the 10th through the 19th is not possible.
Okay, so we could essentially schedule a meeting prior to the 9th or before, as long as we hit the publication period. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm asking Randy. Yeah.
Oh.
No, yeah, thank you, Tyson.
Yes, that's correct.
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Yes.
According to Robert's Rules of Order, all we need is a quorum. And one counselor should not prevent a meeting being scheduled at a scheduling date. And consequently, I understand Councilor Parker's wish to be there, but all we need is a quorum. And consequently, I think Robert's Rules of Order say that that's all you need. And we have called for a meeting to be scheduled on the 11th. I understand Councilor Parker's needs, but I shouldn't let one counselor dictate when this meeting is going to take place.
Noted. Understood.
And Madam Mayor, the decision would be for the governing body if they would like all their members present. I think if Councilor Murray was not going to be here, I think he'd want to be. But the main thing, it is up to the governing body if we're going to move this to another date. It would require a motion and a second and then a vote.
All right, I think that's probably the fair way to do it. I am assuming that we will probably, and it is an assumption that we'll probably wind up with two items, both 12 and 13 likely to be before this body for decision in January. So I don't want to be premature, but assuming that's the case, there has been a request by a counselor to move dates to allow all of the governing body members to attend the meeting. So I would take a motion to that effect.
Can I ask a clarification question?
Sure.
Are we discussing moving the date or adding an additional special meeting?
We would be adding a date. I don't think we want to change, these are the normal meeting times that we have put on the calendar. Correct, Randy?
Madam Chair, you could do it either way. Yes, I mean, you have this date and it is published. So you could just do a special meeting just on this item, which might not be a bad idea anyway.
Well, I think if passed as prologue, there will be robust discussion at that time because that will be a public hearing. So we will have a great deal of comment. So truthfully, one way or another, it might not be a bad idea to have a special meeting devoted exclusively to this issue. Councilor Burkett?
Second point of clarification, sorry. Will we, in the motion, name the specific other date? Because I don't want to make a motion and then find out that I'm not available for the date that we decide to go on afterwards.
That would be awkward. Yes, that would be very awkward. And again, everybody could sort of look at their phones and calendars to figure out if, when their availability is going to be. We do this quite a bit in other settings with appeals. So again, this is a request by a counselor in order to attend. Yes, Counselor Parker.
Mayor wrote, councilors, would it be feasible just to use the 25th as the date instead of having a special session? It's already a meeting set in place.
Discussion on that? I think we're all right. I think we have a moratorium that is still in place.
I mean, the other potential benefit is more maybe develops from the state between now and then as well.
It might. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up on that issue, but it could happen. So we could push these items for discussion and action to that second meeting in January. Anybody have a thought on that one? Yes, Councilor Murray?
Well, my thinking is that we're going to have do some additional work besides these two pieces of legislation. And I'd rather not put it off. I mean, let's get it out of the way so we can clear the deck and start working on some other items that need to be done. I think we need to look at our commercial area and do some refinement in that. And there are some issues I think that we haven't talked about that probably need to be addressed. So let's just do it on the 11th and be done with it.
Well, I think I'm sort of back to thinking though that out of deference to one of our fellow counselors, I would put it to the governing body to see if they would be open to a special meeting to address the cannabis issue. I think that's really the collegial thing to do, frankly.
I'll make a motion that we move it to the 4th if that works for other people's availabilities, the Tuesday prior to our scheduled meeting, just to keep the night of the week cadence.
All right, we have a motion
I
to have a special meeting on the 4th. Certainly gets it up a little bit further too. So, all right, so I'm going to I have a motion in a second. I'm going to take a vote for the idea of having a special meeting on January 4th to address the cannabis ordinances. Kevin Lucero?
Aye.
Mel Knight?
Aye.
Tyson Parker?
Aye.
William
And thank you.
Moldman?
Aye.
Stuart Murray?
No.
Zachary Burkett?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. So we will be having a special meeting on the 4th, limited to cannabis. And I do think there will be additional refinements, work done between now and then as well in order to flesh that out. And of course, that will be a public hearing. So there will be input from the public. All right, so let's get back to then possible consideration, action, and approval of resolution 2140. Do I have a motion? Yeah, I'm
Madam
sorry,
Chair.
Randy.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just the motion should include an amendment in the resolution to that date, to the 4th of January from the 11th, on this one and the next item as well.
You mean when we do the motion to, for instance, hypothetically, should Councilor Murray put a motion on to put this on the calendar, it would be for January 4th.
Well, he'd make the motion first, and then we'd have to amend the resolution to make it the 4th.
Okay. I think we are back to the point where I would take a motion for consideration, action, and approval of this resolution. Councilor Murray?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and councilors. I move that we publish and post Resolution 2140 for consideration for action and approval.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Second?
Second.
Second.
All right, I think that was Councilor Waldman. Does anyone, Randy, do you want us to have an amendment, a friendly amendment that it will include the date of January 4th, or do we do that later?
That would
God
be
bless you.
now,
All right.
an amendment now to change the date from the 11th to the 4th.
Mayor,
Do I
I
have
move that we amend the resolution to change the date from January 11th to January 4th.
All right, and I think procedurally, we vote on that first. So we will be voting on that amendment to change the date of this meeting to the 4th. Kevin Lucero,
Aye.
Mel Knight,
Aye.
Tyson Parker,
Aye.
William Waldman,
Aye.
Stuart Murray,
Aye.
and Zachary Burkett.
Aye.
All right, now we go back to the main motion, which is to put this on the agenda for the 4th. Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to 13, item 13, which is possible consideration, action, and approval of resolution 2146. This is a resolution directing the publication of a notice of meeting and intent to consider adoption of an ordinance amending ordinance 2106 relating to cannabis and cannabis products, prohibiting the production of cannabis and cannabis products within 300 feet of residences, providing an exception for personal production of cannabis under the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act and the Cannabis Regulation Act. Do I have a motion to put that on the agenda? Councilor Knight?
I move that we post and publish resolution 21-46.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think I saw Councilor Burkett's hand up. All right, and then do we also have an amendment to put that on the January 4th agenda? We need that. Thank you, Councilor Knight, and I think
Yeah.
Councilor Knight so moves, and who was the second on that one? Councilor Parker. All right, so we're going to vote on that amendment first. This is to place this item on the January 4th agenda. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
All right, and then we're going to go back and to the main motion, which is to place 2146 for publication and post on the January 1st agenda. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Do we have, thank you. Mel Knight?
Aye for January 4th.
Yes. Tyson Parker?
Aye.
William Waldman?
Aye.
Stuart Murray?
Aye.
And Zachary Burkett?
Aye.
Okay, that's okay. So right now we have these two items. They will be on the January 4th meeting, special meeting. And we will be completely, that will be a single item. We only have one more item on our agenda, but I would like to say how grateful I am actually, and that the conversation here tonight I thought was really productive. I think there are a lot of ideas. I think we're going to continue to work for something that we hope follows somewhat the intent of the law and protects the quality of life in our community. And I appreciate all of the counselors. Yes. Councilor
Mayor,
Waldman, I'm recognizing you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank Corey for all her research and inclusion in the packet. We spoke a couple of months ago of my desire to find out as much as we could of what's happening in other jurisdictions, and I think she did that. She wasn't able to find anything that was comparable to the village of Corrales. Closest was Brockton, Massachusetts. A little bit different, but I want to thank her for all the work she did in inclusion in the packet. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Waldman. I'm sure they appreciate that.
Thank you.
Councilor Lucero?
Mayor, and this is just, I think I'm just kind of spitballing here, but, and I know you can't see the future, but what are the chances of that meeting actually being in person?
Well, I mean, I would have thought we were going to be in person now. And
Right.
instead what's happening is the numbers have come down a little bit. But I think if I talk to Bah Humbug Commander Latin, who's just a real party pooper, she's going to indicate that she's going to be worried about a post-holiday surge.
Oh, yeah.
But I will give, if we can do it, we'll try it.
Okay.
The one thing I will say, and like it or not, when we have Zoom meetings, we can have up to 300 people that can phone in and be seen and heard. If we get into our chambers, we are much more limited in the number of people, but I will do everything I can to look at those numbers and make a decision there. Councilor Parker?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor Council, I think also if it's with the Zoom on there, the people who are not at the meeting, if it's in person, the people who are not at the meeting cannot call into it. If it's Zoom, everyone can call into it. That unless that's what was just said. But anyway, that was my thought.
Thank you. So, all right, there is one more item, confirmation of appointment. Dolores Beal, who has been a stalwart member of the Senior Center Advisory Board, would like to be reappointed. She's an excellent community volunteer who's given a lot of time to the Senior Center, and she'd like to continue that. Do I have a motion to confirm her? Mel?
So moved. I
Thank
confirm
you.
Dolores Beal.
Thank you. Councilor Waldman, seconds? Thank you. I'm going to take a voice vote. If there's no discussion, Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman? He's unmuting. I know he is.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
We're never going to get it figured out until there's no more pandemic, and then it really won't matter.
I vote aye too.
Councilor Murray. All right, so I think at this point, we're down to announcements and future agenda items. Obviously, January 4th is a single agenda item. Then I think Councilor Murray would like to have something from the library. I know we also are going to have a presentation about senior center living possibilities. Anyone else right off the top here? Yes, Councilor Murray.
So I don't know if this is possible or not. I'm just going to throw this out and see if it sticks. But given the circumstances back in Kentucky and Tennessee, is there any way that we could support the anybody back there with maybe some monetary money, through a resolution to to some support organization, someplace to give them some relief? Is that a possibility?
I don't know, she answers boldly. I would love to be able to do something. I don't know what our legal restrictions are. Councilor Audio, Randy, what do you think?
Oh, Mayor and Councilor Murray, there's things that can be done particularly if they're government to government. We can send relief to government organization to get that relief to its people. The anti-donation clause is a bugaboo there. So we just have to do it right. The other thing we could do is coordinate and help people to find GoFundMe sites or find other ways that and coordinate citizens' donations. So we have options.
Yeah, it just seemed to me that this might be something that we should think about, for Mayfield, they damn near got wiped out. So it was something I was contemplating. I just want to see if anybody else had any comment.
Councilor Waldman, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, would it be possible to put something on the village website that directs people to certain GoFundMe sites?
Can we get away with that? Can we do that? Okay, that'd be great. That'd be great. Let's, and I'll have, maybe we just want to make sure that we're 100% sure that the places we're directing them to are legit and good. But I had the same thought, you know, Mayfield is only a few hundred people more than we are. And they were just devastated, really.
Yeah, I had some friends that got really hurt in an accident there with their truck being turned over, their horse trailers broke her legs, both legs. So.
Councilor Lucero, you had your hand up too?
Mayor, just kind of thinking about it now. If it means more people can participate on the 4th, having it by Zoom, I withdraw my request to have it in person.
Okay.
If more people can participate in on Zoom, let's do it like that.
Okay, I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I'm sure there will be more items for the 11th, but for now, I would take a motion to adjourn. Thank you. I'm not even going to take a voice vote. Good night. Thank you for your hard work. I really appreciate it.
All right, good
Thank
night.
you.
Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Have a good
Happy
year. We'll
holidays,
see you on this
everyone.
side.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your-
Same to you. Thank you
All right,
all.
bye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.